Alrighty, go ahead and call the meeting to order. Start with a roll call. McKee here, Lanterman
Here.
Friedrich
Here.
Barenkamp
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Perfect. I'd like to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On to agenda approval. Is there anything, staff, it doesn't look like there's any changes?
The only change, Mr. Mayor, was we updated the city council schedule to reflect some additions that have occurred in the past week, and so that was updated on the dais.
Gotcha. Anything from council? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Nichols.
Second, Friedrich.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have no presentations, so we have open forum. Jay will walk us through. This is, again, just for your reminder, for non-agenda items. We have 5 minutes.
Yep, so we'd welcome anybody who'd be interested, who'd like to speak on something that's not currently on the agenda, to walk up to the microphone. We have cards over at the table, right by the door. Fill out the cards so that we have your name and your address and record. Go up, state your name and your address, and then you have 5 minutes to speak on something not on the agenda.
Going once, going twice, sold. Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda consisting of items 6A through 6H. Does anyone want to pull anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. All good? And I will
I'm good, yep.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 6A through 6H.
So moved. Nichols.
Second there, Ken.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Moving right along. On to planning. I'll start with 7A, which is a concept plan review for Corcoran Crossroads Liquor Store concept plan. Is that Natalie or Dwight?
That's me.
Dwight.
Yeah, thank you,
Take it
Mr.
away.
Mayor. Item 7A tonight is the Corcoran Crossroads Liquor Store Concept Plan.
Thank you.
Cool. This is a request from Cal and Raj Patel. They're seeking some informal feedback on a liquor store concept plan on their property, 19905 County Road 10. This is the southwest corner of County Road 10 and 116. It is a 0.82 acre property, guided commercial and zoned neighborhood commercial or C1. And for context, this is the former site of the Napa Auto Parts store. Overview of the request: the applicants are looking to repurpose the existing building on site for off-sale liquor sales. This includes just a little bit over 4,800 square feet of sales space with 16 off-street parking stalls. I believe there was a typo within the staff report. It said 24, that should have been 16, so I apologize for that. Currently, within the zoning ordinance, off-sale liquor stores are only permitted in the C2 district, and the subject property is zone C1. So in order to operate on this site as a liquor store, it would require a zoning ordinance amendment. And during council's discussion with the applicant, they may want to consider providing potential feedback on the zoning ordinance amendment for this change. Going into the C1 district standards itself, the property complies with a lot of the minimum lot standards of the C1 district. However, a lot of the standards, or a number of the standards don't comply, namely with the setbacks. So that's setbacks from the major roadways, the side property line, and then the rear property line. They are all within those minimum setback requirements. However, these conditions predate the zoning ordinance standards and are legal non-conforming setbacks. So while the applicant isn't planning to expand the site today, if there are any plans to expand the site, it would require a variance approval from those standards.
Can you say that again?
If they expanded the building, it would need a variance to go into that setback.
Oh,
further.
gotcha.
Sorry.
But it can be used the way it is with the current setback.
Correct, yeah, I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to point that out. They're
Good job.
not planning on expanding it.
Yep.
A lot of information was provided within their application. However, with a formal application, we would need some more information on the building height and impervious surface coverage of the site as a whole, just to confirm compliance with those standards as well. The building architecture was not, information on the building architecture wasn't provided in too much depth within the application. From staff's view of the site, it appears to be constructed with painted metal siding and roofing. Code allows up to 20% of the exterior wall to be metal, whereas the building appears to be 100% that metal material. So this predates the adoption of the current zoning ordinance and is a legal non-conforming material. However, if the building is expanded, at least 25% of that building material needs to be upgraded to comply with the ordinance standards. The parking lot that the applicants are planning to use on the site would fit within the existing pavement area on site, so they're not proposing an expansion of the pavement area, and would contain 16 stalls. The number of stalls required for this type of use is 8 stalls plus 1 stall per 200 feet of retail space. So in total, this site would require 32 stalls. And so council may wish to also provide feedback on the potential variance request for a reduction in the number of parking stalls required for this type of use. Additionally, off-street parking for non-residential uses are required to be paved with either asphalt, concrete, or other materials approved by the city engineer. The current parking lot is paved with asphalt, but there are sections that contain gravel, which are only allowed in the rural commercial district. So these gravel areas were not permitted by the city and were illegal expansions. So a formal application would have to require those gravel sections to be removed. Additionally, off-street parking lots within the city also require perimeter concrete curbing. The current parking lot does not contain a curb, so a formal site plan would require a curb to be installed around the perimeter of the parking lot. Setbacks from county roads for parking lots and drive aisles is also 100 feet, same as the structure setback. Previously, a site plan for this parcel approved a 10-foot setback. However, throughout the years, there have been a number of illegal expansions to this parking lot, and that setback has encroached about 12.5 feet from County Road 116 and have actually encroached 5 feet into the county right-of-way along County Road 10. Both of these were not permitted by the city and were illegal expansions and would need to be vacated with a formal application. Setbacks from other property lines are required to be at least 10 feet. Currently, there's a 0-foot setback along the southern property line, as that's shared with the gas station to the south. That's allowed, whereas there is a 10.5-foot encroachment into the neighboring property to the west, which is also an illegal expansion and not approved by the city. So again, with a formal application, that encroachment would need to be vacated. So council may wish to, through their discussion, provide feedback on a potential variance from this setback standard if 10 feet weren't sufficient for that setback, since that was previously approved for the parking lot. If the applicant were to request less than a 10-foot setback, council may wish to provide some feedback on a variance in that regard. And then all of the parking stalls are 90-degree stalls, which requires a minimum drive aisle width of 26 feet. And I will note that at its narrowest point, the drive aisle is about 13 feet wide. So obviously that wouldn't comply with that standard. So the applicant could consider revising the parking stall angles to 45 degrees, which that only requires a drive aisle width of 12 feet. Otherwise, they could consider removing parking stalls 9 through 13, as that appears to be where that non-conforming drive aisle width is occurring. But that would, however, conflict more with that minimum parking stall requirement for the site. So staff would recommend exploring the angled parking a bit further before pursuing a formal application on the site. Currently, the site contains 2 access points, one on County Road 10 and one on County Road 116. The concept plan doesn't deviate from that. However, all access to the site would need to be reviewed and approved by Hennepin County, and a formal letter would be provided by the county with a formal application. And then just some last miscellaneous analysis. Landscaping for the site would require at least some shrubbery around the parking lot that's at least 3 feet in height to screen the vehicle headlights from adjacent parcels and the right-of-way. And then if the building were to be expanded one day, the code currently requires 1 overstory tree per 1,000 square feet of expanded area and 1 understory shrub for each 300 square feet of area. The concept plan didn't specify any lighting on the site. However, if the applicant pursues a formal application, then all exterior lighting on the site would need to comply with the standards outlined in section 1060.040. And then signage in this district, this site is allowed 1 freestanding sign, which there is an existing freestanding sign located near the intersection. And then they are also allowed 1 wall sign on the primary building face, so long as it doesn't exceed 10% of that building face. So, quick summary of the issues. One issue is that they are proposing a liquor store in the C1 district, which currently isn't listed as an allowed use within the C1 district and would require a zoning ordinance amendment. The number of off-street parking stalls required for this use would be 32 stalls. However, the concept plan is showing 16 parking stalls and would require a variance from this standard as well. And then the parking lot setbacks are currently within that previously approved 10-foot setback requirement. So if the applicant wished to have an even more reduced setback, that would require a variance and could be discussed a little bit further here today as well. And then the drive aisle width is currently being shown at its narrowest point at 13 feet where 26 feet is required. Staff believes that this could be addressed by revising the angle of the parking stalls. However, that could be just part of the mitigation, and then part of it could also be reducing the number of parking stalls on the site as well. So that's another item for the council to consider through their discussion. So next steps for the applicant would be, if they chose to pursue it, they would submit a land use application for a zoning ordinance amendment for the liquor store use in the C1 district, and then a site plan amendment to establish this new use on the site, and then any variances that may be required from their site plan. So at this point, staff recommends that the City Council review and discuss the concept plan, provide the applicants with informal comments. Any comments or opinions made by the council today are considered advisory only and shall not constitute a binding decision on the request.
Sounds good, thank you. Any questions for Dwight? Council?
Not yet.
Okay. Discussion on it. Do we want to maybe tackle the zoning use first? Touch on that?
Either that or general comments.
Either what? Go for it.
Well, Dwight, would you agree that this is a challenging property to develop?
I would say that's probably a fair statement.
Okay, and that's through no fault of the applicant.
The applicants have bought the site at its current condition, so yeah,
Okay.
Not much has changed.
Okay, so they are not the cause of any difficulties or any issues with the property right now, correct?
I'd say that's correct.
Okay, all right, and they've applied for other projects before, correct? I
Not
believe.
any land use applications. We've been in discussions and meetings with the applicants, but this is our first actual land use application with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. I
They
guess
have
I
come
would-
forward, if I can clarify, with a handful of other concepts that haven't been able
At
to
the
work.
staff
Yeah,
level.
Just at the- Just at the staff level with concepts.
I'm sorry,
I
didn't
think
hear
there
you.
was a project.
There was a remodel too of Crossroads
Right.
with the tanks, new tanks and stuff like that.
Never made that
Yeah.
on staff level.
Okay.
There may be something that predated me and Dwight's time,
Yeah.
but yeah, as far as the current site in front of us, there has been one or two times they came just to talk with council in a
Right.
very general sense. This is the first concept plan that has made it to council on this site with this applicant.
And is it, as it stands, would a dispensary qualify for that building, for that property?
If it met all the zoning standards, theoretically, it's in the correct zoning for it, yes.
Is it too close to the park?
Yeah, that's, I was gonna make
I don't, I'd have to pull up the map, and I'd have to find the map, but,
Okay, that's okay.
I
I didn't mean
think-
to
Might
catch
be
you off
too
guard.
yeah, I think theoretically it could, but yeah, there are buffer requirements, so if it was outside of those buffer requirements from the city park, then yes, it could go in.
Well, I guess I'll just say that I strongly support this, and I would urge the applicants to move forward. You would have my support. Thank you, that's it.
All right. Thank you.
Mr.
Anyone
Mayor.
else? Yeah, Dean.
I'd agree. It's a extremely challenging area, and I know they've been trying to do things there and such. There's a number of restrictions and stuff. I'm not all that concerned about the number of parking. I'm not sure how you get 32 people there and such, but it would be nice if one thing could happen, and that's stopping the drive-throughs. That's a right turn lane for 10 and 116 South. It'd be nice if that could be resolved and stopped. It is a bad thing. When Napa used to be there, it was an issue where people, they're still cutting through, and they're going both ways. They're heading west on 10 and south on 116 by skipping the light and going through that parking lot. So it'd be nice if something could be done to curb that activity too. As far as the outside and the look of the building, I'd like something a little bit more, less Napa blue there if possible. As far as the steel structure and stuff, if there's some things they could do to make it not look like a pole shed, that'd be a good thing too, but a different color might be okay, but a little bit, something more modern looking, if at all possible. I see a couple of nods and stuff. You and I've had the discussion, Cal, and you know, and you've got some really cool ideas, so I'd like to see it the same as Councilmember Lanterman. I would support this going in.
All right. Michelle or Jeremy?
I'll take the other side, just because of this being in the core downtown area. As that area develops, I'm not real excited to have a liquor store at that prominent a corner and then revising code to make it happen. I also think because of the vintage of the building, it's not going to fit with what we want that area to look like. I think if it could be made more attractive, I might be more supportive of it, but it's gonna look really out of place, I think, in 10 or 15 years when more things go in that spot. So that's my concern.
And I guess, and I hear you on that, I guess I would say that 10 or 15 years from now, if it's impacting the business, I'm sure that they'll throw a coat of paint up there, you know, make it a little more appealing to that area.
Thank you. And Michelle?
Sure. I guess I would ask staff, what are the restrictions for remodeling that building? Would there be a possibility they could do some sort of remodeling to make it more appealing if they were to turn it into a liquor store?
So, go ahead.
To expand.
Sure. Are you saying like an expansion or just remodeling
No
from the interior?
expansion, just remodeling the exterior. No expansion, just taking what they have, the bare bones, and just revamping it.
They certainly could make some adjustments to the exterior and bring it up to our current code requirements for the commercial districts. That would be allowed. I think they would need a building permit for that, but And nothing within our code would
Okay,
prohibit that.
okay. I would definitely support something. I do agree somewhat with Counselor Nichols in that I think that it needs to be something that has more appeal than what it currently is existing as. Which is why I asked about if there's any barriers for them to actually do a remodel.
Just real quick too, if I can go off of that, as far as the model and barriers and stuff like that, if it's more than a percentage, it can't be done without being brought up to code on setbacks and everything else, correct?
So right now, it appears that 100% of the building material is that metal siding, and technically code only allows up to 20%.
Right,
If they wanted to do up to 50%, it's still an improvement over the current conditions, so I don't think there's anything that would prohibit that necessarily. I think we,
It's really when they expand.
yeah, it's when the building expands or changes its footprint, then we're looking more towards the variances and coming back through the council through that avenue.
so again, back to your guys' question, we could work with them to make this work. But to do a tear down and all of that stuff, that's an awful lot to expect out of anybody on this corner, so. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. And I would agree with a lot of what has been said by everyone. I would like to see maybe some upgrades to the exterior if possible, just to get a little closer to kind of what's going to be developing around that area and what has. Whether that's just voluntary or potentially, is there potentially a way, if we were to make this a conditional use in C1, that we could have some say on the exterior?
We would have to look at that with the city attorney. I believe the architectural standards that we would require of all liquor stores. Potentially, if there's a variance, that might be, if it's a mitigation strategy to a variance, depending on, there'd have to be a nexus between the requirement, but that'd be potentially a mitigation strategy that can be considered as part of a variance.
Okay, just an idea. Other than that, in terms of the zoning change, the only thing I would recommend, I'd be in favor of it, I think, but wanting to have some sort of square foot limit that wouldn't affect this site, but in terms of allowing it in C1, so that we're not getting maybe the crazy big liquor warehouses in the C1 district. Other than that, I'd be in favor of it. Another thing.
How much other C1 do we have currently?
Question?
There's a parcel off of 101, just north of the Ebert Mama G's parcels. That is technically C1. I'm not too certain why that was on C1 when everything else is C2 along that corridor. But maybe because they're thinking access would be tight to Bellwether, so maybe that's why that happened. I'm not too certain on the story behind that. And then,
I pulled up the zoning map, if we can switch the screens over to that. Bear with me here, I'm zooming from afar here. But, yeah, the orange is the C1, at least in the downtown district here, and then I believe what Natalie's referring to is,
yeah, there's like one parcel up there, yeah.
yeah, up in that middle.
But if you go back to
By
the
itself.
downtown area, I think it's easy to overlook, because right now they're houses, but we do have, like right across the city park area, there's C1 property zoned as C1, and the houses are non-conforming right now. So those could potentially be redeveloped. And then, is there any in the southwest area? Is that all treated commercial? Okay.
Would it,
Yep. way
just
down
as
there.
a devil's advocate position, could you zoom back in again? Sorry. So the hot pink, remind me, is that downtown mixed use?
The pink on the
They're two different.
east side here is the downtown mixed use.
Okay. would it maybe make sense to, maybe this is more of a comp plan discussion in a couple of years, but if this is going to be the core downtown area, and there's not really a neighborhood in this section, should this all really be C2 since it's the union of two major county roads and that's more traffic-driven commercial?
You're talking about the property south, the triangle piece?
Well, and that whole strip along 10 that's currently C1, should that really?
Oh, have it all be C2?
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Just want to look at the uses of what's there and make sure it doesn't cause any issues.
Timing is good. We're about to start comp plan work.
Yeah.
Well, so the land use is correct, so I don't know if it's necessarily a comp plan. I think that would just be a rezoning, because the land use is already commercial. So
Oh,
it
fair
would
enough.
just be what district we want to apply. So I think right now, the community commercial, we have it off 101, and I think that was more because it's the motorist, the community commercial is more about appealing to motorist uses, I think, because 101 is going to have the road improvements of the region that coming in pretty soon, and then same with the C2 that's in our southwest area, that's along 55. So I think 10 and 116 are not, while busy roads and roads that we rely on significantly, I don't know if they are the same in terms of regional access.
Okay.
Anything else?
I like that idea.
Did the applicant want to speak on anything? Don't have to.
Myself, Cal Patel, and I really.
Your address, please, for the
Your
record.
address for the record.
Yeah, I live in Medina, 440 Lilium Trail, and we have been in Corcoran for almost 4 or 5 years now. As probably some of guests over here probably knows that gas station, Corcoran Crossroads, that's us. So today, I mean, we are here to see the possibilities of a liquor store in our building, and I really appreciate everyone's time and support and suggestions. It's a very difficult lot to deal with. We have some properties in Long Lake, Orono, and every other, even in Wilmar as well. But this one is a tough one to deal with. So I really appreciate your help and guidance to get through this process, and again, all your time and efforts to make the Corcoran great, that'll be great. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff, is there anything else you think we need to cover?
Any other questions?
No, I think that kind of answers a lot of the overarching points of the staff report, so hopefully the applicant has a good sense of what the council's position is, and it's up to you guys to, if you want to proceed or not.
Okay.
So,
That'd be helpful.
Okay. Do you want to?
Start?
Sure.
Okay, sure. Just to review the parking aspect a little bit, you said that it's required for 24 spots of parking, or that's what they had? It's 32.
32, yeah,
Okay.
24 was a typo in the staff report.
Okay, and that's based on the size of the building?
It's based on the sales floor space within the building, plus
Okay.
8 stalls.
Okay. Because I feel like having that many parking stalls is too many, even 24 seems kind of a lot in that area. And I
But what
agree with Councilor Vanderkamp in that it does get used a lot as a throughfare between those two roads, so I feel like, I don't know what you could do to mitigate that if you change the storefront and have the storefront on one side. I'm not even sure what you could do, but I feel like we could work through that parking issue. And maybe even decrease the number of parking spots there, just to have it be a little bit safer? Or can we not do that?
We could ask, I think to avoid a variance, there's a clause that says data can be used to support, so I think we'd want to look at it, because while I do think normally you're not necessarily going to have 16 customers all at once that stay for a long time, there are times where you might have like a wine tasting or something like that, where all of a sudden it does attract more people all at once. So I don't think we want to start out with too little parking either, but maybe there's a happy medium we could find with some data of existing liquor stores.
You might wanna look at like the, there's a Holiday or something in Medina off of 101 to 455 that has a gas station and liquor store. That'd be kinda similar. And oftentimes I feel like you see people there that'll run and get gas, and as they're getting gas, run in to get something from the liquor store, or run into the convenience store, and run into the liquor store after, so there might be kind of some cross-sharing of parking, especially because it's the same owner and kind of that.
Yes, I think we do
Combo use.
allow for some of that as an IUP.
Okay.
So that could be something that we could look at, yes.
Okay. Anything else? All right, I think we're good there. Perfect. And we'll move on to 7B, which is another concept plan. This is the Larkin Road Plan Unit Development Concept Plan.
Thank you. So this is the Larkin Road subdivision. It is a PUD concept plan, planned unit development concept plan. The applicant is Maplewood Development Incorporated, and they are looking at a property that has frontage on, a little bit of frontage on County Road 50, with the main frontage on Larkin Road, 20130 Larkin Road. It's approximately 70 acres. Currently, the property is guided and zoned for light industrial. The applicant is proposing a PUD for 189 housing units. This would include 165 single-family homes and 24 twin homes. The estimated pre-development density is 2.99 units an acre. So here is the proposed concept plan. The twin homes are located, concentrated in that southwest corner. And then there's 50-foot wide lots, more located on the southeast corner, moving into 65-foot wide lots as you move north. And I also wanted to point out there is the regional trail that runs along primarily the east boundary of the site.
Can you show?
Yep, sorry, I forgot that you can't see my mouse.
No worries.
So, regional trail, I believe, will come up through here and move to the east, and then has a meandering path here. It follows a creek that is pretty much right on the borderline as you move northeast, and then it would move through here to connect to City Park to the north.
Gotcha, thank you.
So the proposed PUD would require a comprehensive plan amendment to re-guide from light industrial to low-density residential. And then the low-density residential land use does allow for single-family homes and twin homes at a density of not less than, a density of 3 to 5 units an acre. Once wetland buffers and the trail corridor is deducted from the gross acreage, it is anticipated the proposal would meet or exceed the 3 units an acre. Right now they're right on the cusp at 2.99, but it's not the final net acreage that we'd be working with. So again, they are proposing 24 twin homes and 68 50-foot lots for single-family homes, and then 97 65-foot wide lots for single-family homes. The comprehensive plan is a living document that can be changed at the discretion of the City Council if they find evidence to support an amendment. The staff report does provide some factors that would be something the council will want to consider as they as this would move forward. But ultimately, we are able to make an amendment if we feel there is a reason justifying that. So just again, the proposed off-road trail is shown along the eastern boundary of the site and is consistent with what we have in our 2040 comprehensive plan as well. The corridor will be a part of the Three Rivers Park District Diamond Lake Regional Trail and will connect City Park from the north eventually to the segment that's already underway in Tavera to the south. They also are showing additional local trail connections in their development that would provide more access for the residents, but those smaller segments or local segments would not be eligible for park dedication, since that is not part of what we're showing for our comprehensive plan. For landscaping, they would be required to plant at least 189 overstory trees as their underlying requirement. And they also would have a buffer yard requirement along the west boundary, so that there are properties zoned RSF2 and urban reserve, and a buffer yard class A is required where they abut RSF2, and buffer yard class B is where they abut the urban reserve properties. So it's not the entire western stretch. There's a couple smaller properties that are guided for higher density, so they would not be required to have a buffer against those properties, but most of that western boundary there would be a buffer. As far as the actual PUD, there's really two review components. We have the basic PUD design standards, and then we get into the flexibilities versus the proposed public benefits. For the basic PUD design standards, they are required to have an appropriate integration to surrounding uses. This could be through the use of similar development elements from the surrounding uses, or by providing a transition through architecture or landscape buffers. So it is important to keep in mind that the industrial there is an existing industrial district to the east that butts on the east property line for this project. As we move to existing homes and farming uses to the west, eventually some of that will be redeveloped at a higher density, but that's what's currently there. And so part of the council should consider whether that makes the transition for some higher density but still considered low density residential, provides a transition from the industrial to the existing houses and farms to the west.
I'm sorry. The property to the west is, you mentioned higher density. What, could you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, so so to the west currently, the properties are single family homes, and some are being used for more farm, and also Sunram is to the west, so it's a quasi-agricultural use. It's really more of what did we called it? It was like soil. It's like more of a soil use. They're using it. We reviewed it just a couple of years ago. Do you remember that? I'm sorry, I'm just kind of forgetting the word, but that's what's existing
Soil
currently.
processing?
Soil processing, thank you very much. So that's what's currently located to the west, but the land use and guiding as that area further redevelops, there will be some low-density residential areas to the west, which would be 3 to 5 units an acre, and there's also a couple properties that are along the northwest boundary of this parcel that are medium residential. So this property right now is guided for industrial to match up with the existing industrial to the east. And then I think the idea was that there would be a transition to low-density residential and medium residential to the east.
And then where is that transition? Right to the west as it's currently drawn?
Yeah, right as it's currently drawn, all of that's along the west of this boundary. West of this site. Do we have a, sorry. Map might be a little more helpful at this point.
Tell them where the buffer would be.
Feels like a Heinz commercial.
Like I'm wondering, what is this currently?
Those are,
Try to pull it up.
I think there's a house in there, there's maybe a couple.
Straight
So-
west, there's
so-
houses and some farming and a couple of horse
Right,
ranches.
but then this is industrial here, right?
Oh, but to the east, yes.
Yeah, so this is it, but here, they're saying that this is gonna become higher
All right, one
density?
second.
It's currently guided to become.
Nothing is working.
Try it again. Wait.
City maps. Could we pull up our guiding map?
That's what we're
Yeah.
trying
They're
to
working
do.
on
It's
it.
not working.
Gotcha.
I have it here if this is helpful.
So to the,
So this is the parcel in question. There's
Okay.
high-density residential
There you
here on the northwest.
High density, okay,
Here we go.
thank you.
There, it's up now.
Okay, so we have so can you see my mouse, or is it not gonna show it? Okay, you can kind of show it. All right, so this is the parcel as it exists today. So this is our future land use map. So it's good, this is not reflective of necessarily what is there today. But we have the industrial park to the, really to the north as well, and to the east. And then we have some medium residential, these orange pieces to the west, like that northwest corner. And then it moves into low density residential. But as it stands today, that area, same area, we do have some areas that are already in stage 1 that have low density residential and the medium residential. But the rest of it is urban reserve, so there's so that some of those areas to the west likely wouldn't be redeveloped for quite a while yet, and have some farming and single-family homes in that use. So that's, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Just real quick too, and I'm sorry if I'm bringing some up that somebody may not want to talk about. This was the industrial park that we'd already
Yes.
so-called blessed and such, and the question that came out of that for me is, the neighbors all around did not know or realize that that had been rezoned to industrial. It was supposed to be what is being asked for in this concept plan. Mark, I think you were there too, when we were all surprised that all of the neighbors didn't realize it was turned into industrial.
What do you mean
So-
was supposed to be?
What's that?
What do you mean by was supposed to be?
They all understood that
Oh.
it was supposed to be medium density, and then that industrial concept and everything came in, and
Because I
then
think
we,
it's been industrial at least the 2040 plan and the 2030 is.
I believe it was changed with the 2040 because the council at the time had wanted to look at expanding the tax base, and so they thought that expanding
Okay.
the western boundary of the existing industrial area.
I'm just
Yeah.
asking because it's hard to believe that that many people didn't realize that it changed. So it just, that's previous administration's previous stuff. I just was wondering if anybody or anything ever came of that, and I'm guessing no. So all we'd be doing, to simplify it, is switching it back to what it was planned previously.
This request is a lower density than what it was previously.
This is lower than, okay, yeah, okay,
And what are the densities for medium currently?
8 to 10 units
8
an
to
acre.
10.
The other complicating factor is also, it's at what, 2.99, likely to go slightly above 3 maybe, if we were to go forward.
Yep.
But then there's the 3.5 that will be kicking in at some point in the next couple years, year or two.
The other question I had too, if we're on the questions, I'm sorry
Sure,
if I'm
yeah.
jumping in.
Oh, what?
If you could pull up that, just the layout of this, Natalie, real quick. I'm just curious, where is the gas line relief? Is that the green area? And shouldn't that be an easement all the way across that property?
There is an easement area, I believe they have designed around that. That was something that was called out to them a while ago. So that would, for the most part, remain green space, and any other uses in there, they'd have to get approved with, as part of their easement agreement.
But I thought that was a bigger
Yeah.
swath than this. I thought
I
it
did
was
I did too.
a way
Way
bigger strip than,
The whole way across.
The strip on the right side looks about the same as I
It
remember,
looks-
but I don't
Yeah,
see it on the
but-
left
For
side.
the
I
most,
remember it going
it-
across.
they're showing it, so I think
There's no houses in it, so I believe they're showing it. It just might not be all green space, but they are planning on having it be, for the most part, green space. Some of it looks like it might be in the yards of some of their lots, but that doesn't cause an issue. They just,
and that's okay, that's what I'm
I
asking.
don't believe so.
Okay,
Yeah, it would
yeah.
ultimately have to be something that they'd have to work through with their easement, but they can't, I believe it's structures and roadways that are more of the issue in that
Okay.
area,
Somebody plants a big oak tree, is that a problem?
potentially,
Yeah.
yes.
Wouldn't wanna plant anything on that beast.
So that'll be a problem at some point, because somebody will do that.
Problem insofar as it'll get ripped up if they need to get at it.
Thank you.
So, as far as the basic design standards, appropriate integration is really that first standard, so the council can certainly talk about whether they feel that this is a if that standard is satisfied as a transition between the existing uses to the west and the industrial to the east. Variety and enhanced design is the second basic standard, and the requirement is that at least 5 different styles of detached homes be provided and 2 different styles of attached homes are required. Example elevations were submitted, and so that has been satisfied. And the open space requirement with the lot width that they are requesting, 15% open space is required, which is 9.47 acres. It's based off of the net development area. And they are proposing 13.08 acres with the current concept plan, so they do exceed that requirement. Additionally, a perimeter buffer is required along major roadways. Our code would consider County Road 50 a major roadway, so a landscaping buffer would be required in that little portion that abuts County Road 50, which is not currently shown, but would be something incorporated in the plans if this were to move forward. Public accessibility refers to access to natural features such as creeks and lakes. There is a creek along the west boundary, the northwest boundary here, that's dark blue line. Public access is provided with the regional trail corridor running along up that as well. Also, the City Council has authority to impose discretionary standards for the proposed PUD as reasonable and necessary to protect and promote the general health, safety, and welfare. So if there is additional standards that have not been addressed with concerns you may have, that would be something that we could discuss as a basic standard as well. The application currently does not propose any prohibited features or modifications, so they satisfy that standard as well. For the PUD flexibility requested, there are 3 features that at this point are very clear that we would need flexibility for. From the RSF3 zoning district standard, which is what we typically use as the base district for a low-density residential planned unit development. They currently have an undefined minimum lot size, but it would be less than 7,500 square feet. That would need to be defined if the application moved forward. But right now, that data wasn't provided as part of the application.
But that would still fit within what they were saying in terms of 97, 65-foot wide lots and 68, 50.
Correct, so they said they're 50, on the concept plan, they have it marked that the 50-foot wide lots would be less than 7,500 square feet. They just didn't identify what the square
Gotcha.
footage would be, so it would be
But it'd
something
still
that
be
we would
50
define.
feet
Yeah.
across, okay.
And then a minimum lot width of 50 feet for single-family lots would also be a PUD flexibility. And then also there is a portion of the property that's in the shoreland overlay. The line of where that district ends was not shown on the concept plan, so it's unclear to me exactly where that might impact some lots, but I'm betting there might be a few lots that would need flexibility for a minimum lot width of 50 feet within that shoreland overlay.
The shoreland overlay, are you talking next to the ponds or the creek?
The creek.
Okay. I was gonna say, I don't see shoreline, but if the creek is shoreline, then gotcha.
Yeah, and I think that it might, even if it's a 65-foot wide lot that's within the shoreland overlay district, that would also need flexibility from the current.
Okay.
So, it basically, I believe it's like over 100 feet when it's in the shoreland is the minimum lot width. So that would be, it's something that we have typically granted properties within the shoreland. Examples would be Fairway Shores and Cook Lake Highlands. They did
Yeah.
that, so.
Just the other question too, this has been called a ditch forever, right? And now it's a creek or it's a shoreland?
I believe it's a governor ditch or something along
Okay.
those lines, yeah, but
It just seems like we're
it's,
making it,
so I believe it's a creek that was identified with,
Okay.
the DNR because this was something that was also a part of the, Corcoran Farms application that
Okay.
was within the shoreland.
thank you.
So we, as the city, we don't identify what considers shoreland, that's direction from the DNR. Okay, so the potential other PUD flexibilities, again, the shoreland overlay district, there may be a need to have reduced setback requirements. The impervious surface limit within the shoreland overlay is 25%, so they might need flexibility from that standard. This is all just speculation from staff's analysis at this point. And then maximum height limit of 25 feet may also be a request too that comes in. So it'd be helpful to understand where we may or may not be willing to look at flexibility. And then also, they did not request this as part of their application, but just looking at the floor plans provided, it appears that they will have garages that exceed the maximum 55% of viewable ground floor street facing linear building frontage. That is a standard of all of our urban, suburban residential districts for single family homes that they, and twin homes that they have that maximum 55%. We have, for twin homes so far, we have granted flexibility from that standard. We don't always grant that standard for single family homes. They do have a 3-car product, and I will say 3-car product on a 50-foot or 65-foot wide lot, you're going to exceed that standard, so.
Natalie, is, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yeah.
Natalie, is that compatible to the property that was in front of us or is in front of us still going on, so to speak, over off of Maple Hill? Beth Husted's property,
They did
aren't
not.
there some there that were the same as that?
They, so the last application in front of us, they did not request any flexibilities from our standards.
Okay.
So they likely will not have any 3-car garage products.
Where did we grant that?
We've granted
Off
it
the top of
for
your head.
most applications, so Fairway Shores, we granted a certain percentage of the homes could have, it could exceed,
Okay.
so that it could have some 3-car garages to provide. And then the Fairway Shores, let me think here, I believe Tavera and Ravinia also had some flexibility to exceed those standards. It's a little different for each application.
So we've done it.
Yep, and then Woodland Hills recently, we granted a variance so that they could also do that as well. And then in return, they provided a bit more architectural detail with the 2nd level. So.
I'm glad your memory is what it is. Thank you very much.
Let's see here. Okay, so then for the PUD public benefits proposed, placement of uses so as to integrate with adjacent uses could potentially be satisfied with this application. Again, the applicant's narrative is they're trying to provide that transition between the industrial to the east and some lower residential uses to the existing uses to the west. That I believe is a benefit that they would be trying to achieve, and we can certainly talk about how that is done. And then attached units are embedded, so how we define that is we didn't want them to be viewable from major roadways. The attached units are on consolidated in the southwest corner, which is along Larkin Road, which is not considered a major roadway per our zoning code. So they are away from the County Road 50 corridor. Internal trail connections, again, there is a couple areas where they are proposing a local connection to the regional trail beyond this initial connection to the east, but also another one up here. And bear with me, I'll try to, also doubles as public emergency access, but also a trail connection here too, to just provide a little bit more ability for residents in the development to connect to the trail system without having to go all the way down to Larkin, or all the way up to County Road 50. Open space is consolidated and usable. They have really focused it on the perimeter, but also again in that area where there is that easement. And then open space is connected with green natural corridors. Natural resources and features are retained. They really do have minimal impacts on their wetlands. There aren't a lot of existing trees on the property for them to save, so that, but as far as the wetland impacts, they've tried to minimize that. Natural resources, and then area of parkland, woodland, or other open space above what is minimum. And so again, their 13 acres proposed is above the 9.47 acres required. There are several benefits that are not currently proposed. You can come back to this list, but if there are strong feelings on trying to incorporate some of these into the proposal, we can certainly discuss that tonight with the applicant. And I do think there are a few unlikely PUD benefits with their current proposal. I think it'd be difficult for them to really switch it up to have distribution of attached units. Existing rural structures are retained and reused. I don't believe that that's really going to be something they're able to achieve while achieving the density requirements. Lot size variety is very limited. Natural restoration work, there's not a lot of natural areas to restore. Extraordinary environmental protection and innovation and utilization of new technologies are not part of the current proposal. And then appropriate integration with neighborhood scale uses, creation of open space using multi-story buildings, and percentage of units within 1,000 feet walk from a park simply wouldn't be applicable for this. But the rest, I think, could be certainly something that we discuss. Next steps for the applicant would be updating the feasibility study that was completed with the Corcoran Farms application. Is because that was specific to industrial, we would have to update it for the low-density residential use. A neighborhood meeting would be required for a PUD application before we can consider a land use application complete. And then the first application would be a comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, preliminary PUD plan, and preliminary plat. Additionally, they would have to go through Wetland Conservation Act permitting for any wetland impacts, then a second land use application for the final PUD plan and final plat, and finally watershed approval of city-approved final grading and stormwater plans. So for the recommendation for council tonight, please provide feedback to the applicant on the concept plan. The feedback is non-binding, and while it's non-binding in nature, it is used by the applicant and staff to help guide the application as it moves forward. To help with the areas of discussion, the city does have a high level of discretion for a comprehensive plan amendment. So that really is, that would be really helpful to understand what support there is for that before we really get too much further into the PUD details. And for PUDs, it is not expected that a PUD satisfy all potential public benefits. The size and constraints of the sites should be considered in determining whether the proposed public benefits justify the extent of the flexibilities requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Natalie?
Yeah, just a couple. Natalie, just real quick, the cul-de-sac to the west, that ends into, it looks like a wetland, is that right?
I think the wetland's a bit further west.
It's a little west, so would that ever be a road that would
Yes.
be put through
Yes.
once things happen west?
Yes. Yep.
And
That's
then-
eventually where this will be connected to County Road 50.
That would be the connection to
Yeah.
50, then that answers my next question. And it always bothers me that we've got the long cul-de-sac and then that we've got a 20-foot fire access road and such. That would not be an access point for a road that we could predict.
Not
Is that
that
right?
we can permit or require. We would certainly work with Hennepin County. Public safety also would like Hennepin County just to take a second look at this. But they were very adamant with the Corcoran Farms proposal that they would not grant an access
Still
there.
did not want it there.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it's could just be a continued part of the trail over to the park and such, but then is there a way we can get a public crossing there, or pedestrian crossing there, if we can't get access? That's just some of my questions. I appreciate and like this layout a lot, and I still mixed feelings about the industrial that was planned and was gonna go there and such, but this is something in my mind that would fit. If you go to, the map is up and such, I don't know if I wanna say this, but I'll say it. It might look a little goofy, but in my mind, my first thought was, is there a way to line Larkin with the twin homes and then all single-family homes on the other side of those two cul-de-sacs? Just a thought. Instead of pushing them out to the west, or is there a way to put those twin homes to the eastern portion and the western portion be more single-family? Just a question. Everybody follow me, or am I?
So you're saying you want it flipped so that the twin homes are over here?
If possible, otherwise I don't see anything wrong with this. If we're talking industrial and then higher density and then lower density, why are we skipping and putting lower density in the west and not on the east? So just,
Yeah.
again, the layout, I could have never imagined this much being done and such, and a lot of open space, the trail is there, everything that I'd like to see in a development like this and such. I just, I don't know if there's any neighbors here understanding that there's a possible change in sight, but, this would be lesser density than what was previously planned before this flipped to industrial. So, okay. Just all the conversations I've had with a number of people, I don't hear or feel there would be a lot of resistance from the neighbors, but we all know that can change. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll just say, I think it's an awkward transition from the east to the west. With that said, I like this more than a 400,000 square foot distribution center. So I think it's an odd transition, but I think we could do worse. So I would support this.
I like parts of it. I think Dean and Mark's comments, I would concur with both of you guys. I struggle a little bit with going from industrial to low-density residential without understanding the economic implications. So it was changed to industrial because the council at the time presumably had some information and data that they needed more tax capacity than what they would have gotten with medium density, and so they increased the zoning. I'd want to have a better understanding before I would agree to a rezoning to what our current projections would look like. And low-density residential doesn't generate a ton of tax revenue for the city. It creates demand for services that increases expenses. I'd like to better understand the unit economic impact of this before I would be comfortable accepting a change. And maybe as part of that analysis, what would the difference between low and a medium density rezoning be? I like the idea of the open space around the trail. That to me is the most attractive part. To the degree that that can be maximized in terms of its quality, I would see that as an inducement. Maybe that would counteract some of that financial concern.
I'm on the fence on this one. I'm kind of landing where Jeremy's landing a little bit on this one. I think it's a better option than what we have previously been presented with the industrial park. So I like that. But that would be one of my thoughts was that if it had been switched to light industrial, what was the train of thinking with that? Was it because, I mean, we're at a perfect opportunity to discuss this because we're going to be looking at the comp plan. So maybe we shift industrial somewhere else, light industrial that makes more sense. Maybe along the 610 corridor, that direction on 101, to compensate for the loss of this if this plan were to come through. So I think I'm on the side of supporting it, but with that piece of knowing and understanding where we could place other light industrial. And does the property owner, I mean, I'm sure the property owner is aware of this possible switch as well?
The property owner for the site?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to
Okay.
sign off on the application.
Okay.
He's in the room.
He's not smiling though.
And my feedback would remain
Please
the
smile.
same as last time you guys came in, that I would not be comfortable with doing the change on the fly. I'd be open to having a discussion during the comp plan process for the 2050 plan, and seeing what, kind of digging into some of the concerns that you guys have raised a little more, and what potentially the impacts would be of a change like that, or maybe a different type of change, maybe a mixed use site that has some residential component, some commercial component. I'd be initially more open to in that discussion, but again, I would prefer, but it doesn't sound like it necessarily needs my approval. It sounds like there's general support, I think. for the change?
I would say 50-50 for me, wanting to know more.
Okay. I wouldn't be supportive until maybe a discussion during the comp plan process. I think
I'd rather have a discussion sooner than that.
Okay.
I just, with as quick as things are in the past, neighborhoods that have gone in and such, I don't want, I really do not want to wait on this discussion until 2030. I'd rather see something go in there, and the option of higher density is, it sounds like that's a couple of folks' thoughts. Higher density on the east side and lower density on the west side. I kind of said that with a flipping of the townhomes and stuff. Is that something that people would be interested in?
If it did move forward, I would like that change.
That's what I'm asking. I'd rather see something come out of this, and then this is the time for us to give to the applicant information on what could make this move forward. That's my thoughts on this. I don't want to turn this into another 4 or 5 year discussion. It's been 3 or 4 years, and we, with some duress, we did approve the industrial park, and there was 3 or 4 possible buildings, which would total thousands, tens of thousands square feet of building and such, and that fell through. While I love farmland, while I love everything that we got in this city as far as open space and those kind of things, I feel this is something that is possible, and a higher density might be one of those things that could help the applicant. The other thing that I forgot, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here. It has been a very long day for me. Natalie, is there any conversation, or could we add conversation to, would we even want to entertain a connection into that industrial park with, is that 75th? Just as a flow type deal? Or not something that
I don't
would be in your,
believe so I think part of the issue is they are platted lots, in some of the areas that theoretically we could, plan for a roadway. The wetland and the creek can make it difficult to
Yep,
actually navigate it.
I was imagining it would end up turning into a bridge project and everything else just across the creek, and there'd be all kinds of implications there. So just a question, but.
It would be nice to have another outlet, for sure.
Yep.
Mayor, we did look at that with the previous development.
Yeah.
It was entitled the Industrial Park, and it wasn't desired with that project, primarily due to just different uses and even access out to 116. So we're kind of routing them down and over to a better access point at 116. In that particular case, it was trucking, but there's probably some similar things. We'd have to look at it on a feasibility level again, but with the previous application, that really wasn't desired to make those connections.
And I'm only asking it for more pedestrian traffic to downtown instead of all the way down to Larkin, all the way to 116, and then there'll be a corridor there. All of those things, just, is that an option? As I sit and think about it, there's no sidewalks or anything down 75th, so I'll retract that comment.
Yeah, we'd
Never
have
mind.
to look at pedestrian things kind of separately, but to Natalie's point, it's platted, and, we would have to look at
Yeah.
interest in what's going on downtown and where we land downtown in terms of what the uses are and where we're sending people, so it becomes a larger conversation. Those type of ped movements can actually be added later too.
Currently, the more I think about it, the more I think that it'd be kind of a bad idea, just because of all the activity down in that area and such, so. I don't think it's something we want to dump pedestrians down.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify something too, as it's come up a couple times, the 2050 comp plan will begin in 2026, so we're actually 7 months out before we start it, and it will be submitted in 2028. And so just, I've heard a couple dates thrown up, so for people's understanding of what that means, the study will occur from 2026 until we have to submit until 2028.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask one more question?
Please do.
So I'm looking at like the Larkin Road and the County Road 50, and I know Hennepin County has said no more access on County Road 50. When was that study done where they said there would be no access on County Road 50?
When the industrial site came through.
Yeah, it was part of the Corcoran Farms
Okay.
discussion, and it's not that they said no more access on County Road 50, they said not in that location because there was too many other factors on the other side that didn't make sense.
Visuals and stuff that just
Okay.
doesn't work there.
Because then my concern is Larkin Road is kind of a dangerous road because people are already trying to speed across there to get across 116, to get over to the other side, to get to 10. They don't want to go down to the stoplight. And so the increase in traffic on that location could be pretty significant with this many houses going in there. So I don't know if there was a way that Hennepin County could relook at that and say, well, there's a stoplight at least at that other intersection. That would at least maybe alleviate some of the,
I think it could be resubmitted, but correct me if I'm wrong, my reading of their assessment of it last time was absolutely not.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and again, that was looked at the EAW feasibility, we do it again, their access spacing is pretty strict, so I mean, we don't anticipate them changing their position in this location.
But we would have to look.
But that goes through the same process, if it were to go through and get their comment, but again, the feasibility would also look at any other impacts related, turn lanes, whatnot, so again, we had that for the previous project, but we'd have to refine it for any new concept, and that would look at any of those other impacts related to transportation. So there was an improvement project at 116 and Larkin with the previous project, and then now this is a different concept on a different use, so we have to evaluate what other improvements would be required. That's the next step after this concept.
And I think, I don't know how far they would go, but I think if we could encourage them to look at the impact of traffic at Larkin and 10, would have also not just the Larkin and
Yeah.
16 intersection, because that traffic goes across, it's gonna
Exactly.
add a lot to an already challenging intersection for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Just real quick, and I'm sorry,
No?
how many residents, how many units in this area?
189?
99.
189. I think the industrial park, the number of traffic trips on the industrial park was over 2,400 trips. This would be 10 per, what's the number? You said 100 and how many?
89?
189, so you'd be at 1,890 trips. So in theory, all of the studies we've heard and everything else, this would be less than what the industrial park had, but a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a factor, and then the other factor for me is the implications, tax base,
Yep.
cost of services.
I understand that.
All that. So yeah, anything else from council? Otherwise, did the applicant or applicant representative like to speak at all? If not, no worries.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Mario Cutrell. I'm the owner of Maplewood Development Company. I guess, I think it's more of a direction question. So if you need to have this conversation regarding tax base and so forth, is it possible for us to maybe come back with another review? Because I don't know how we could move forward with a formal application with the comments we've heard on the concerns. So can you give us some direction on it?
I don't see why not. Natalie?
So we would have, as far as an economic analysis, I don't know that we've had an applicant complete an economic analysis. Sometimes they've completed a market study, but I think what was brought up by Councilor Nichols, like an economic unit analysis, I believe would have to be something the city would have to undertake. And it would be beyond my
Big
expertise, so we would have to look at a process for that. If that's what we need to answer before, if we're saying we don't need that to really move forward, then I think that's a different discussion.
Or if it's potentially during the comp plan process, if we wanted to meet with you guys during the comp plan process, which, like Jay said, it's not.
I think the benefit of the comp plan process is we can theoretically, like, okay, if we're going to give this up, we can make it up over here, whereas we really can't have that as part of this proposal.
Exactly.
If you recall, when I first started, council had asked for some similar analysis. We called it, stovepipes versus rooftops conversation. And at that time, we didn't want to spend the money to have someone to do all the analysis for us. So we borrowed some analysis that was done for a city that wasn't truly a comparable city, but came with some conclusions in terms of industrial versus home development. And we've kind of moved in that direction. But I had the understanding that that would be something that we're wanting to undertake as part of the next comp plan, because there's some critical decisions that need to happen as we continue to develop. We have not had the success that we'd hoped for in commercial and industrial development. And so we have to rethink our strategy if there is a desire to diversify our tax base.
And if there's a value in diversifying it. That's, I think, another open question. Because I think what that data had showed was a lot of the excess tax revenue actually got sucked out.
Fiscal disparities is a challenge. Yep, absolutely.
But it's complicated.
It is
It also
complicated, I would just.
lower costs of services
So-
to different types of.
So to the developer's question, it's a legitimate question. Like, we don't have the internal resources and the time frame for us to go out and provide that analysis right now is going to be pretty time consuming. So council would have to direct that this is a priority of effort for us to focus on this right now. And it probably wouldn't be appropriate for us to just focus on this one development, because this has implications for the city at large. And so if that's something you'd like us to do, we
I just
can.
feel by the time we got to be able to do something like that, we're starting to get into the comp plan process.
It'd be nice to have that data as we start the comp plan process versus generate it during the comp plan process, though, too. That's sort of setting the table for those discussions.
Maybe because staff bring back an idea of what.
I know where we can get, where I got the data from before and they are the people who do our long-term financial plan. So I can get some analysis on what it would cost for us to do through the MUSA area, some analysis on that, as well as a proposed time frame on how long it would take for us to complete that.
And then maybe keep the applicant in the loop on potential timing of when we're looking at doing that analysis or whatever else.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to see it expedited.
Okay.
However we can expedite it, I'd like to see it expedited.
Do we have one more that would like to see it expedited?
I would.
Okay, we got 4 that would like to see it expedited.
So I will do some research. I'll come back with both cost, scope, and timeline.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Next meeting?
No.
It's also a short,
That's
Yeah.
okay.
a week and a half
I'm-
this time. Alrighty, anything else on this one?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure, so I'm hearing comp plan amendment, we would like some economic analysis to really understand the impacts. And then for the rezoning to PUD, the proposed flexibilities, the proposed and potential flexibilities, I haven't really heard anything on that. We're pretty much open to that's currently identified in the staff report.
Well, I think some of the feedback that like Dean had about
With,
layout changes.
if possible, and I argued with myself a lot, a higher density than the 3 that's here, with a higher density to the east side and less density to the west side. A transition of density, if you know what I'm saying.
Clarification, are you saying higher density overall, or just moving the higher density part that's in the southwest to the east side there?
Even give them the option of higher density to the east.
Yeah, so
Overall, it'd be great to see it
Okay.
up to 5, but single-family homes to the west and whatever to the east.
Yeah, I
If
for
that
sure
makes
agree with
sense.
the reconfiguring if we're moved forward as this, of that southwest corner to maybe the east side there.
Especially by Sunran.
Yeah. Regarding the garage flexibility that you talked about, if it were to move forward as is, I could see why we would maybe grant that, like we have on some of the twin homes. If, this is just my personal opinion, if we were to grant it on the single-family homes, I would want to do it on a limited basis, like we had maybe on some of those Fairway Shores, some of those other developments where a certain small percentage
Okay.
are allowed to, but not very large across the whole community. And it would maybe also be nice to have a conversation with Three Rivers about, I think someone brought this up earlier, about if it's not an access, which it's not likely to be, regardless of what this is, a full access, it's emergency access, would there be some sort of Three Rivers Diamond Lake Trail crossing on that?
Yeah, I think, I have that one noted, so I think that could be something that we look forward, look with Three Rivers. I can't remember, I should have looked at it, I can't remember if they were already planning a trail, separated trail crossing there. But if that's a benefit the council would like to see, we could work with Three Rivers to see if that's something they'd be willing to look at and what the cost sharing would be if it's not part of their current plan.
Okay.
Okay, so overall, I just want to clarify one thing, Councilor Camp, you said closer to 5. Do you mean you want the development closer to 5 units an acre, or what did you mean by closer to 5?
Again, I fight with myself, but a higher density than the
Than the 3?
2.99 or 3 that we have, give them that option if that keeps them interested in pursuing and such. I'd entertain that. I think it's one of those things that all the stuff that we've seen over the years, usually something like this, they're asking for much, much higher density than what we want. And in the places it's been, I would have rather seen low density. Down here, it makes sense. Going back to the previous plan being a higher density type, medium density type number, I'd be in favor of that with the caveat of the western side being single family.
Okay, all right, thank you, I appreciate that clarification.
Okay? Thank you
And-
for getting my head on straight.
And never in a million years did I think that I would say that I would support higher density. So I would concur with Council Member Camp.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
If the density is higher,
You don't get to talk anymore.
does that affect the open space percentage?
So if no, I don't believe so, because they are already at the highest maximum for the open space percentage, so it's like lots less than 55 foot wide require 15% open space.
Okay.
So I think the only question would be, do you prefer having the 65 foot wide lots, or do we want some higher density, which maybe you would have less 65 foot wide lots, or maybe probably more like the 50 foot wide lots, but you get some higher density and maybe a transition to those wider lots on the west side potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
And then any thoughts on the PUD public benefits? Was there anything that they're not currently proposing that we'd like to see incorporated?
It's a little tough at this point because it's a little early with.
Well, and I've heard the trail crossing, so I
Yeah.
think that's one that, yeah.
I think that works for now. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for your patience. And anybody that's up on the agenda, appreciate it.
On to 7.3, which is, or
7.3?
7C, which is Heather Meadows' third
There we go.
edition OS&P final plat revision.
Thank you. So our last planning item tonight, the applicant is ML Unlimited LLC. This is for the site near Oakdale Drive and Heather Lane. Heather Meadows' third edition was an OSMP plat that was approved by City Council in 2024. As a part of that application, there's also a CUP and some variances that were approved as well. Specific to this request tonight, the variances approved allowed structures to remain within the 100-foot buffer zone and setback for agricultural structures. And it specifically pertained to Lot 1, Block 4 and Lot 1, Block 5. Those are the two residential lots that would front Oakdale. And the applicant's request tonight is they would like the city to reconsider some language that was included in the approvals. So specifically the language required by resolution for the open space outlot covenants as it relates to ownership, the requirement to plant native grasses within the required buffer zone, and to allow for agricultural use within the buffer zone as well. Just a reminder of the final plat that was approved. So again, the two residential lots on Oakdale Drive is going to be where the buffer conversation's focused. And then Outlot A and Outlot B are the open space outlots that are going to continue to be farmed for the applicant's tree farm for the foreseeable future. So we have two sections in our subdivision ordinance that talk about ownership of the open space outlots. The one says open space shall be owned by an individual, a homeowners association, the city, or other legal entity that will use land for open space purposes pursuant to a conservation easement. So it's a little, the language is a little loose in this section, but then you get to section 9040.060, where ownership of common areas is detailed, and it explains that where certain land areas or structures are provided within the subdivision for private recreational use or as common service facilities or centralized wastewater systems, the owner of such land and buildings shall provide covenants, and the ownership is limited to dedicated to the public where community-wide use would be anticipated, subdividers' ownership and control, or homeowners association. Staff was, when this was adopted, I don't believe staff actually was involved, and staff was involved, I'm sorry, but the actual writing, I believe, was also partly done by George Gamak, if I'm understanding the history correctly. We believe the intent was that the open space outlots really weren't meant to be sold to an outside entity that had no interest in the development, and that was part of the discussions that we had originally. So when we finalized the resolution for both the preliminary and final plat, the ownership covenants that made it into the resolution were based on that intent. And so the open space outlots can be dedicated to the city. The open space outlots can be sold to the owner of Lot 1, Block 4. That was because the CUP that was granted for agricultural structures on that lot to remain the structures needed to maintain Outlot A and Outlot B. So it seemed reasonable that should the seller pass on the land or sell the land, sorry, not sell the applicant, should they sell it to someone who is living in that lot, that makes sense considering the CUP that was granted. And then they would also have an interest in the development overall. And then the open space outlots can be dedicated to a homeowners association that comprises a majority of the homes within this development, and the open space outlots can be sold to a developer once municipal sewer and water are available. So, and I'm sorry, that is the specific language that made it into both resolutions for the plat.
Could I ask you a question?
Yep.
This has been before this council already, correct?
Yes, twice.
Okay, and we've already considered it, correct?
Yes.
And we already voted on it, correct?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that no changes be made to the original approvals.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Nichols. Any discussion?
I have discussion.
Go for it.
The requirement for planting 100-foot buffer from Oakdale in those two properties, of Lot 5 and Lot 4, of native grasses, we are impacting both those properties, and they're both homes right now. We're saying with what was said, or what we said was okay, I understood it, or I thought it was, those would continue being residential homes. and to turn that into native grass plantings, the first 100 feet, we're all the way back. It doesn't fit.
I think it is good to discuss that. So the way I read that part of code, I had interpreted that as meaning that portion needs to be thickly planted as a buffer for neighboring properties. That doesn't, to me, mean that
Trees and shrubs.
that doesn't mean every scrap of grass needs to get ripped out and native grass is planted instead, but it needs to be landscaped in such a way that it provides an effective buffer through that portion.
And I agree with that. I'm just saying, for what I'm understanding, the first 100 feet from Oakdale of that whole property is in the native grasses.
Yeah, I don't think that would be, my interpretation, me as one
So-
vote, that I would interpret it that way. But I would say I would expect there to be a lot of trees on those lots, a lot of shrubs on those lots, and I want them to stay there.
And that's what he had originally agreed to, I thought, when we were talking about it, were extra trees, extra shrubs, and those kind of things.
The narrative that was included indicates that the trees that are being planted are going to be harvested,
Yeah,
which I do not like. That doesn't meet my expectations for a buffer.
same.
And I didn't understand it that way. I thought all of the trees that were being planted were south of the two homes
So,
in the outlot A, not in and amongst their yards, if that makes sense. That's the way I understood.
Let's hear from Natalie.
so I mean, I can, if we just want to skip to this part of this, basically, the variances that were granted said that the buffer yard should be planted where it would not conflict with existing buildings. The code does say planted with native grasses, shrubs, and trees, so the use of "and" is, we would have said "or" if it was an option to just do one or two of those things, because it says "and," that's where I believe that that's what we need to do. However, I would also say, they also, a part of their request, not just the native grass planting, but also allowing them to continue farming this area, which is has a field line on the existing.
Where are you pointing at?
Oh, darn it, I'm sorry. This field line that was shown on the plans, but was not requested to be exempt from the buffer, that the variance resolution that was adopted does not.
So we missed that.
Yep,
Okay.
and then well, I don't know that we missed it, that was just what
Okay,
we discussed
misunderstood
was
it.
part of the buffer zone. And then they are also requesting these yellow shaded in areas also be allowed for their tree farm. So that's the request. So if we want to, the resolution that would provide more flexibility to the variance that was granted could be specific to just say, you don't have to do the native grass plantings, or to what extent they'd have to do the native grass plantings. Or if we want some or all of the ability to farm additional areas of within that buffer zone, that'd be the resolution that's in front of you tonight. So that's, but, sorry, I'm trying to rush through.
Yep, no, I understand. And I understand Mark's motion and such. I just, the way I understood it was the two homes would still be homes. And they would add more trees and shrubs, not to be harvested, but as what you just said. The existing farmland would continue to be farmed. And the neighbors to the west have all understood the same thing, that it still continues to be farmed, but it would end up being a tree farm.
Correct,
That makes
the
sense.
outlots are what
All the
we
way
would
to, all the way to,
understood to be the tree
all the
farm.
way to Oakdale.
Well,
not-
part of the outlot
not
does
lose
goes to
that.
Oakdale, but I don't, these areas, the highlighted yellow areas were not identified as farmed areas.
I
as
didn't,
part of the
I didn't read it that way.
Yeah.
I thought those were identified as just more landscaping for the properties in lieu of adding all of the
Seeing now that it'd be
grasses and stuff.
potentially harvested trees, does that change your opinion on that?
I wouldn't want those to be harvested. I'd want them to stay existing,
I don't know that we have
Properties.
control on that, though, do we?
but to the east side or the west
It's
side,
supposed to be a buffer, so it'd be a zone,
Okay,
it'd be a code
there,
enforcement
yeah.
action if it kept getting torn
Because of the
down.
buffer, yeah.
Yeah, it's a condition of the plat, it's a condition of the variances, so.
Yeah, fair enough.
And there's a bargain there that was struck, right? With the OS&P, they're doubling their density, they're doubling their building rights. The price of that is partially that buffer creation and the maintenance of that buffer.
Adding the trees and the shrubs and stuff we talked about. But again, I thought that that everything to the west of that yellow area was tree farm, and everything south of these two properties were to be tree farms. So I'm sorry I misunderstood. I mean, we also granted the variance for the two driveways on the eastern property to continue their deliveries and pickups via semis and such, so.
Isn't there something with the structures too?
Yeah,
There was a couple of them removed, if I remember right.
couple removed, lot 1, block 4 right now exceeds the by right footprint. The agricultural structures can remain as part of maintaining Outlot A and Outlot B, specifically Outlot A, because that's the one that's adjacent. But it also would maintain Outlot B. So there's a CUP that was granted, and then one of the agricultural structures near Oakdale it had a 91-foot setback, and a 100-foot setback is required. So that was a variance that was granted as well.
So not to take away from Mark's motion, should we finish that, or we had a?
We can. Mark, was your motion on both of the requests, the outlot request and the native planting request, or just the native?
Yeah, no, both.
Both, okay. Dean, does that?
I thought we had a motion
We
and a
did,
second.
yep, we do.
Yeah.
We can call that vote on that if you'd like right now. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
4-1.
So we're leaving it the way it was?
Yes.
And again, just to restate, the interpretation of the trees, shrubs, and native grasses, maybe we should have a little bit of discussion on that.
I'd like to.
So even if we take the conservative interpretation that you need to have some of all of them, that doesn't mean that all of the grass has to be native grass. There's switchgrass and like that could be planted in a couple spots as part of the overall buffer design and fulfill the code without having them plow everything down and plant only native grass, which is what they seem to think that they have to do. I don't think we want them to take the trees out and put in native grass.
Correct.
Correct.
Good clarification. Yeah,
I'd
agree. Good.
I'd rather be that way. It seems that there's a misunderstanding or whatever. I'd like to keep the yards with more landscaping. And I'd rather see the yards mowed than heavy amounts of native grasses and such.
So we're not saying forego it, but to plan it to like what extent? Because I think right now the directions come from me because we do this for our other buffer yards. All of it has to be native grass. We don't just do a portion of it being sod. So that's, I do believe that is what the code says. So if we're saying that we want a deviation from that, it'd be helpful to have a threshold identified. If we're saying we still want some native grasses, where that should be located. Is it just in the right of way? Are we saying that we want it 20 feet in? Like, I need a little bit more because otherwise it goes, leaving it all up to me is not very helpful because I don't know that's going to result in something that you want to see.
But that's the direction I was going, but it sounds like we are just
Well, go ahead.
saying yes to.
What are you thinking?
We had a motion and it was 4-1 against me, but what I would like to see is if native grasses are needed on that from Oakdale down, planted in the right-of-way. And then from the right-of-way, the rest are normal yards. And then adding extra trees and shrubs that are non-harvestable that look reasonable or can't be agreed by the applicant and our planning department. Again, I'd rather see those 2 yards continue to exist and not just turn into something else.
I think I agree with your objective. I'm not sure that planting native grasses in the right-of-way gets us that. Because then you're going to end up with,
Well, or we keep mowing it, and I don't understand how we do sections of native grasses and keep them look like yards. Right?
yeah, I mean, I would see it as,
I'd rather
it's part of the
just keep
landscaping
mowing.
of the home, right? So maybe there's an area where it makes sense to have some decorative grass, and you could do it like that.
Yeah, I would, that's where I'd rather go, but it sounds like we're saying native grasses, but I'd rather those two look like yards with more landscaping, a few more overstory trees, just something normal, not,
Maybe Natalie, if you
I'm
wanna work
trying
with the
not to make it
applicant on
complicated.
a middle ground and bring it to us to see if it's objectionable or not. And
So, again, I truly believe if we're saying they don't need to do native grasses as the ground cover in the buffer zone, we need to adopt a resolution tonight that says that in variance, in the variance language.
Is that what you guys are saying?
I don't think they should need to plant only native grass in that 91-foot section.
Only native grass.
I think there can be
Some
some
native.
as part of the overall design.
I think there needs to be some.
I think code says there needs to be some.
I would agree.
The code says thickly planted with trees, shrubs, and native grasses. I think you can do thick planting of trees and shrubs, so it looks like a forested lot, a wooded lot. And in that condition, I don't think it means you can't have a regular yard for those houses.
So yeah, I don't think we're saying no native grasses.
Okay, but I'm saying to say that is the ground cover that's required in the buffer zone, we need to adopt a different resolution than tonight. So if we want to say that, what is it the first 20 feet from the right-of-way that should be native grasses? What does some mean?
What is the metric of some?
Yeah, and then it would be helpful to know.
3%.
3%, okay.
If we need a number for a regular yard, I don't want this for the whole city. I don't want every buffer to be that way.
Well,
But
that's what I'm
because we're
saying.
trying to have these as regular-looking home lots,
Mhm.
it's an accent to go with the other things that are thicker. So we want to see lots of trees and shrubs, but not, a thick stand of switchgrass.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the right-of-way should be planted with native grasses, and then 3% of the lot, or the buffer zone should be native grasses, the ground cover. And then, we don't want any farming of any kind within the buffer zone.
I don't want farming of any kind in the buffer zone. I would not think it would look very good. Like if my neighbor had 20 feet of native grass in their yard and then regular lawn behind it, to me, that would be a code violation, because it's looking like weeds. So I'm sensitive to that.
Natalie, a point of clarification, does the buffer start at the right-of-way and then go into the yard?
But yeah,
Because I keep hearing the right-of-way should be native. It really should, because the right-of-way is given to the city for future turn lanes, trails, so that could go away. So I just want to clarify that I think it starts from the right-of-way.
so it's a slightly different design objective of the OSMP, but it's one and the same, and it's trying to clean up this whole area, so.
Okay, so it does encroach.
So,
on the
yeah, I just think the native grasses and plantings required within the right-of-way is one of the design objectives of the OSMP. And so just clarifying that we should, to move forward, we need a landscaping exhibit for these two lots that shows the right-of-way planted, with native grasses or not, like that's part of what I'm trying to clarify tonight. And I think unless there's a different number we want to throw out, 3% of the buffer zone for those two lots should also have native grasses, and then no buffer, no farming within the buffer zone.
And heavily wood,
And heavily
wood
wood.
shrubs and trees.
I think that works.
Okay. So minus the, if we look at this real quick, minus the areas that were shown for farming, is that enough shrubs, or do we need more shrubs to be thickly planted? Again, I'm struggling with some of the, that part is not your fault at all, that is just how the code's written. So what does thickly planted mean? I think I worked with the back and forth with the applicant. This was what I had tentatively approved, and now that it's in front of you tonight, it'd be helpful Is this being thickly planted to you as well, or do we
I
need
think
more
so.
shrubs and trees?
I think the applicant wants to speak, if that's okay,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I'm twitching over here. My name's Marcus, I'm the developer.
Please state your name and your address, please.
22901 Oakdale Drive is my address. Natalie, can you go back to that picture that you had of the topographic, the real picture?
Yes, this is an outdated picture though, just.
Right, okay,
Alright.
so on the left side of the screen, you'll see the field. That's where it's dirt, that's actively trees right now. And we're switching the lot line on that property, so now the trees are, they're evergreens, those are gonna be part of the 100-foot buffer zone. I don't have a problem with keeping them, leaving the trees that are planted there for farm use, just leaving them indefinitely. We don't have to harvest them. All of the green area right now is mowed, and it's just grasses. The other slide that you had up shows the planting. That's already all been done. I did it a couple weeks ago. I planted all the shrubs and trees and whatever. The big thing is the native grasses. I think it's just unrealistic to have, grass that's waist high or whatever that goes 100 feet from the roadway. Those highlighted areas right now are farmed in trees. What's planted, I'll keep there. There's probably, 100 trees in those two areas, and I can keep them just like they are, let them grow and mature, and it'll be a nice buffer. It's the native grasses that I'm really hung up on.
Just to clarify, are they seedlings that are planted there, or did they meet the minimum size requirements?
Yeah, those are, the farm trees are just seedlings. I mean, they're 3 foot or smaller, less than 3 feet tall. All the other trees identified in there have been planted, like I say, and those have, everything's good there, so. It's just the area that 100-foot planting, I don't have any issue with the shrubs, the trees. It's the native grasses, I'd like to keep it all on. It's been like that since the 60s, and we would just keep it like that. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.
So with the applicant's input, can I make a motion to do what we want to do, or what I'd like to see
Well,
done?
I think we're also gonna have to clarify in whatever motion we make that we're okay with seedlings being planted, otherwise we're gonna have to wait for the seedlings to meet minimum size requirements before they would satisfy their landscaping, and that could take years, so.
Or I can just block them too.
Okay, so that just, as far as just making sure that whatever flexibility that we want to grant, I'm just trying to identify that all right now so we don't have to come back, so.
So to real numbers, Marcus, how many seedlings do you have, or have you planted in this area? And I assume it was for farming, or it was for this application?
For farming, yep.
Okay.
There's probably, if I had to throw a number, probably 150 seedlings that are under 3 feet tall. I don't have.
Oh, what kind of trees?
There's white pine, some spruce, some cedar, and some birch. So I
And
don't
it
have
looks-
a problem hitting them with the lawnmower and
looks-
knocking them down, but it's a shame.
Looks very nice right now. I'm just saying, to get to what makes it more acceptable to code, he'd have to plant a variety of trees, what size, and all of those things.
Yes.
So what would he have to plant?
Well, you have, so it's not, right now, the plan that we have is not what is there, so that's part of where I'm concerned.
Yep.
But yes, especially if it was just done a couple weeks ago and we've been working through this the entire time, no more than 33% of the required new trees in this area are supposed to be of the same species. It sounds like they are all of
I
the
think
same
this needs to
species.
come back. I think we've gotten too confused on this. Me personally.
Yeah.
The trees that were planted for farm use were planted, on the west side of the land property, like 3 years ago.
Okay.
So they've been there, I just, the property line on lot 1, block 4, the boundary, it was a third of an acre property and it just got bounced out to a 4-acre parcel, so that's why it's encroaching in the farmed area. Again, I don't have any issue with hitting them with the lawn tractor and tearing them out and putting, you know, it's already nice clover grass that we mow in our tree field, so it would just be mowed, you know, clover and grass mixed. All the trees on that plan have been planted. There's a number of trees and shrubs that have already been planted, and they're in the farmed area, so they kind of look funny. But
So that's where I get a little confused because
That's
the
why I'm
page.
getting confused too, because what you're saying is there's way more trees in that area than what is shown on that plan, and that you also said they were seedlings, so they didn't meet the minimum size, and they're not meeting the species
But there are also
either.
ones that are there that do meet the code
Yeah,
requirements.
and that's where so I had thought that, I thought that the plan in front of us tonight was what was there, so that's where I'm confused, because that was what was requested to be provided, so that we had that information in front of us tonight.
So could I make a motion just to get us going
So-
down the road?
Did we already vote on this?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. What
We
the
voted
motion
on
is.
that, but we're asking for directions.
Well, yeah, can you give me a hint on what the motion's on?
Eliminate the native grasses on the 2 properties.
We
With
did vote on that.
the consulting between planning and the property owner on which trees are acceptable. If they're seedlings and they're 3 years old, they're pretty established. I'd rather not see the ones mowed down, but if we can,
I don't think they need to mow them down. I guess unless staff has an objection to this, my recommendation would be, we have the vote that we made tonight to keep it as is for now. Table this to a subsequent meeting, next meeting, whatever works best. Just try to get a better picture of exactly what's on the ground there. And then we can make a more informed decision on what tweaks, if any, we need to make.
Can I just add another suggestion to that? Maybe based on the discussion that we've had, if you need a resolution, try to capture as best you can the input from council into that resolution to give you the clarity that you need.
So if I can help Natalie out with this, the clarity on the resolution is that per the plan that she had, those species and the sizes of those plants as were identified are intended to be retained. And so staff should confirm that they were either planted or that there's the intent to be planted. And then as far as the native species, you gave a percentage within the right-of-way, and then 3% in the buffer zone was the proposed intention for the resolution. Is that correct, with the buffer zone with the 3%?
I think so, yeah.
Is that still acceptable? That was what was put out, so staff can go out there, visit the site, clarify what's on the ground?
Well, as far as species and stuff, I need a actual survey of what's on there, because I'm not a landscaping expert, so
Oh, fair enough.
I'm not gonna know what species what the different species are, just from
Isn't
that
this something you could
information.
help with?
Fair enough.
yeah, what I'll do is, the trees that are planted for farm use, they're small, they're minimal, it's not a big deal, I'll take them out, it's really not a big deal. The trees that are on the plan to be planted, those, I'll identify them, and they've already been planted, that's, what you had approved, so they're already in the ground.
I try to identify as much as you can before cutting them down. I don't think we're gonna be going out there in the next 2 weeks trying to find a violation.
Yeah, I would say there's no,
I wouldn't rush.
there's
to
no
cut
harm
them
in
down.
more trees.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, the big thing for me is the native grasses. If I could eliminate those totally, that would be really awesome.
and that's what I think for now, we're saying no. That Jeremy's idea of maybe the 3%, having staff go out there with some additional information from you, see if we can make that work, and then we can see how council feels on that.
3% in right of way, or just 3%?
Overall.
Okay. With the right of way.
looking at the entirety of the site, including the right-of-way, 3% is what I'm suggesting.
Okay, so
Council
not
may different
even,
opinions,
not even
but-
3% of the buffer zone, 3% of the lot?
Well, sorry, of
No.
the area that's supposed to be buffer,
Okay,
3% of that.
Okay, and then so then the right-of-way was also supposed to be native plantings. Do we want to keep that requirement as well? So that's in front of the property line on Oakdale.
I don't think it would make sense for that to be like tall grasses that are gonna be, waist high.
I'd rather not, just because of the sight lines of the 3 driveways.
Okay, no, that's
But
fine.
if he's
That's
doing
fine.
clover or something like that, and you combine native clover, great. To me, that's fine.
Do you need a motion to bring that rest back at a future meeting?
Could I just add one thing?
Sure.
I think, and I understand where my colleague's coming from, I think the 3% number is a bit arbitrary. The landowner doesn't want the natural grasses. How are we gonna enforce 3%? I say, it would be my recommendation, either he has to keep it as is, or remove the condition of the natural grasses without this percentage thing that can't be enforced.
I'd agree with that.
I would say that you could say that about any landscaping plan ever. So we do have the ability to enforce, especially if it has a condition for a variance. And if there's an approved plan, I would say there is an ability to enforce it. But ultimately, whatever makes sense. At this point, I just want to wrap this one up.
No, I hear you. I just don't know how you count 3%.
Yeah, it would be based off a landscaping plan. I would need calculations, yeah. And it would, so it, yeah.
So I think the decision really should be, do we require the natural grasses or not? And if we're leaning towards no, then I think the percentage should be 0. So I would support that. I would support the 3% as well, but I think that there are some challenges.
I hear that. I mean, the only reason why I would struggle with it is we're gonna get the same kinds of requests from people forever once we start down that path.
Well, adjusting the standards anytime, we're gonna continue to get the same questions.
But we do have an OSMP plat next week that has a very similar variance to the buffer zone. So yes, I would assume if we grant it here, they will also request that they
That's
not
a
have to
concern.
plant native grasses as well.
That's a concern to me.
Good point.
But is it something that's gonna have to
Yep.
establish
Has
yards
an existing
on
lot,
the, oh,
But if you plant a butterfly garden as part of your landscape plan with native grasses, I'm just saying that's an easy way to meet a low percentage requirement.
I'm sorry, what was your proposal?
If you plant a butterfly garden,
Jeremy
Don't worry
chases
about it.
butterflies now.
easy way to meet a low threshold,
So are we at the 3%
in a
still
normal
then?
way.
Is that OSMP coming at the next meeting?
Yep.
Maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to assess that together. 2 items on the same agenda.
So what would you like for me to bring back on this one then for the next meeting?
If we can get the data from the applicant,
So I have 3 days next week before everything's due.
okay? Or maybe the subsequent meeting.
Okay.
Look at this other one.
It'd be
and then-
July 10th.
Yeah. So I'll make that
I'm out of
motion.
town for 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, you're not here on July 10th, yeah.
July 24th.
Fourth.
This property isn't going away, and the applicant seems willing to work with us.
And I would say you don't need
And,
to plant, I mean, you don't need to make changes to it in the interim as it's coming back to council, right? That seem fair, reasonable?
Yeah, I would, please stop making changes. That's part of the problem, so don't make any changes. No, I need to know what's there. Don't do anything else until we get this figured out.
We've got the one vote for now, and then I'll table this till a future meeting, determined by
Projected July
staff.
24th.
Projected July 24th.
Do you need a motion to table?
I'm making that motion.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Here's that well, thank you.
And then, just really quick, the ownership, lot ownership, that's just, we're done with that?
I believe so, I think that was,
Okay. Just, yeah, thank you.
yep, thank you. All right, let's take a 5-minute break here, and then we'll come back and we can finish up Let's do it quickly, hopefully. We'll be in recess till 9:06 on that clock, 9:04 in real life.
You know, technology and such.
Is it green? Or-
Nope, it's definitely red.
Okay, you gotta wait for it to
There we
be
go.
green.
Ready?
Okay.
Or not?
It's blue.
Okay, so you gotta go into your monitor settings.
Oh, and move it over.
Well, or duplicate your screen one or something.
Yeah, you have to duplicate your screen. So Ole and Sven went to airborne school to become paratroopers. Ole exited the aircraft the very first time after doing all the training, and as he went out, his chute didn't open. Oofta. Well then, he did what he was trained to do, and he grabbed his reserve chute and he pulled the handle, and the reserve chute didn't open. Oh, what you gonna do? He said, my main chute didn't open, my reserve chute didn't open. I bet you the bus isn't gonna be down at the drop zone too.
But I'll be here all week.
Yeah, he'll be here all
You're
week.
welcome. You're welcome.
Tickets available.
I don't have it yet.
Lots of tickets
Where
available.
is it? Well, yeah, it's just black on her end.
Yeah.
It is green. It's supposed to be green when you hit it.
Green now. Well,
Well, hit the green.
we can
Hit the green
probably,
button.
all the information
Try,
that's on.
try one more
We
time.
have it in
Green
our
button.
packet.
Button again.
Yeah, it's just not
Where
cooperating.
is the presentation?
All of the information that's on the presentation is in the packet.
We got it in front of us.
So you got it in front of you.
Go
and
get
you
'em.
can kinda-
Sorry for those in the audience.
If you want, I can turn my, you can kind of look at an angle if you'd like. So we're here tonight regarding the city park bid results. Myself and then Steve Hegland, one of our consultants on the project. As part of this, we had two different bids for the project. We had one for site work, which did include the site work plus 6 alternates that were predefined. So alternate A was the boardwalk, B was the Diamond Lake Regional Trail, just so that we could have a clear call out of how much those costs would be, especially since they would be reimbursed by Three Rivers. C was the full parking lot paving. D is the pinwheel trail paving, so in between the 3 ball fields and then the open green soccer field, there's pathways that go up between those north and south and then to the east as well. And then we've got pedestrian lighting as alternate E, and then alternate F is athletic field irrigation. And on my slideshow, I do have pictures of them, but like I said, they are in your packet, so it kind of gives a little more insight to exactly where and what that includes. It's in the Stantec memo, if that helps.
I was just taking it off, straight off the memo.
Fair enough. So, the second bid was for the building itself, which would include the building. It was done in a lump sum, so the alternates are included in that lump sum price for the building that was included. The 2 alternates that were included in that, one, the interior room partition, so that was to split the room into 2 separate rooms, and then the eastern building overhang, which was very much appreciated by like the Parks and Trails especially. But ultimately, it became an alternate because the cost of the building appeared to be too high. Both bids came in under the estimated amount that we were projecting. So, upcoming projected costs, we'd be looking at $850,000 for the playground. The apparent low bidders would be the ones that we recommend going with that 2.8 for the site work and the 2.2 for the building. There is about $75,000 in interim invoices that we're still processing through. Water connection fees would be approximately $15,000. Electrical service by Wright-Hennepin would be 20 to 30 is our best estimate. There would be construction administration costs to the tune of 6 to 7%. Geotechnical services at approximately $35,000, and then whack and sack fees at $10,000 for a total of 6.2 approximately. Beyond that, we do have external funding that we have talked about every step of the way. So we can get up to $525,000 reimbursed by Three Rivers through the cooperative agreement that we signed with them. That would be for 2025. Should there be additional costs to the project, there is up to $525,000 also for 2026. We have the HUD federal funds to the tune of $500,000. We have the Hennepin County Youth Sports Grant to the tune of $300,000. $100,000 from the Northwest Area JCs, which they did say could be used for other items beyond just the splash pad, which is not shown in this project in this phase. And then $45,000 from Hanover Athletic Association and about $5,500 from the Corcoran Athletic Association as they wrapped up their books. So externally, we've got almost $1.5 million in funding towards the project. We are currently waiting a little bit for the playground itself because we did submit that DNR outdoor recreation grant. We're hoping to get some money back from that, but we haven't heard yet. It would be $350,000 and we would find out by June 30th. So, all that to say, park dedication fund is at about $5.8 million right now. So between external funds and park dedication, it looks like we would actually be able to move forward with the project. Very excited. But so that we wouldn't even need to use all of the park dedication, and we also envision that more would be coming in the foreseeable future due to development. So the main questions for council tonight are regarding the alternates that are included in the packet. So staff recommendation is to move forward with alternate A, B, C, D, and F. And we're looking for council thoughts on specifically E. That's the one where we could kind of go either way. And then as far as the building, does council support including the interior room partition and the eastern overhangs?
And that's included in the bid
Correct.
currently.
Correct. So if you decided not to move forward with
It would
those options,
reduce
they
that.
would be taken out. The only other thing I do want to add, just before questions, we are not necessarily looking for a motion tonight. We would be coming back on the 23rd to ask for more of an approval. We're more looking for feedback discussion tonight.
Okay.
For this entire project, what's the tax bill to Corcoran residents? Okay, because I see project costs, external funding. How much money are you asking for from citizens? $0?
$0. Park dedication and donation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then using external funds.
So hopefully take even less burden off of the city.
And then to clarify, there may be an opportunity for those who would like to donate, but yes, there will be ongoing opportunities for that, but we're not billing a taxpayer for this.
Okay, thank you. So just be clear, no tax money is going toward this?
Correct, park
Okay.
dedication, donations, and grants.
Towards the capital investment. We've already had tax dollars that help maintain the park, and that would continue, just with full transparency.
Sure.
That will be ongoing to continue to maintain the park in perpetuity.
Still the same footprint, the footprint ain't growing.
Correct.
It will have maintenance, two buildings.
Playgrounds in a
other
different
things.
spot.
Yep.
Has some different amenities.
I'll jump in with my thoughts. I've spent a lot of time kind of digging through this with the understanding that we have a couple significant amenities that we want to add on as money comes in and as we complete this phase one, namely pickleball courts and the splash pad. With that understanding, I would be supportive of adding alternates A and B, which are reimbursables of about $525,000 this year from Three Rivers, and it connects that whole loop with Boardwalk and gives you significantly more looping trail. C, which is C full parking lot?
That's what it says, yeah.
Did I mix up my order? C's the one I hesitated the most, but I think I've been convinced on that it will be a benefit. D, I think for the cost adds good additional connectivity and walking paths. E, I don't think is needed, particularly at this time. And F, I think, is a great add-on. And then we'd just be looking at, or I would just be looking at, as money comes in, we tackle probably the pickleball courts first, given the price, and then the splash pad, as well as we start looking at the other parks in the city.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we are stubbing to the location that was predetermined for the splash pad.
Yes.
So we're trying to be as proactive
Yep.
as possible to keep costs. They're gonna be lower now, so let's do what we can to
Let's get her done.
get to there and set us up for success in the future.
I'd agree with the mayor,
Um,
exact same stuff.
building 2, we went through site work.
I'd keep the building as is.
What does that mean? Like with the two options you asked about?
Yeah, don't remove them.
Keep them in?
Yep.
Okay, I agree.
Can I ask a quick question about the pinwheel trail paving?
Sure.
Are the other trails leading up to that paved, or are those not paved?
Those
So
will
would
be
it
the
just
Diamond Lake Trail.
But like, when will that be done? Like, is it gonna be like, we're gonna have dirt and then go to the paved area of the pinwheel?
Are you talking from the parking lot to the pinwheel?
I'm assuming the pinwheel will have several, like, exits, right? If it's a pinwheel?
So there should be a picture in your packet, alternate A is the one that, if you go to Stan's memo. Wish I edited this.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I think it's probably my computer.
What page is it on? I'm in the Stantec memo.
Down one more. 4 of 5 of the Stantec memo. Or 3 of 5?
2 of 5, I think.
We don't have one specific to that, so that's probably on page 2.
Oh, I was looking at A, I'm sorry.
Okay, I was like, I don't
With
think I
the-
saw it.
Where are we going?
Showing the boardwalk, that's probably your best option for looking at the.
So,
boardwalk.
2 of
So-
5?
For the pin, she was looking about the pinwheel.
Yeah, the
She's
pin,
talking about the pinwheel,
Yeah.
but this is probably the best visual that you're gonna get, because it
Hmm.
goes right to the pinwheel. So you've got one that runs east, and then there's the north-south one that connects from the parking lot to the Diamond Lake Regional Trail.
right, but the pinwheel is the paving between the fields, right?
The pinwheel itself is the ball fields.
Is outside the ball fields?
Like, pinwheel is like the setup of 4 ball fields in kind of a circle. So then the halfways are just within. I think you might be thinking
No,
of the
not gonna work here.
that.
So,
Let's got the green one.
The spokes
Okay.
of the hub.
so the whole outside is gonna be paved?
That's the Diamond Lake Trail.
So the whole outside is the Diamond Lake Trail, and this alternative is to pave the north-south portion,
That.
and then
And the east
the
portion.
interior of the ball.
Gotcha, okay,
Interior.
thank
So it
you.
would connect, so
Okay.
it'd
So
give
it
you
does
away.
connect?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, got it, thank you.
Sorry, I think the pinwheel is like a term that can get lost in
I was
translation
thinking it was
little bit,
like a
yeah.
base area and then it was going off, which
Let's-
kind of it is,
Let's call it
but.
the 3-spoke,
The three spoke.
3-spoke wheel.
Big T.
Okay,
Big T crossing.
What other questions can I help answer at this time? It
So-
sounds like,
General consensus on those?
Yeah.
Great job
Yeah, great.
getting us to this point. Can it be done by
super
August?
exciting.
I did include a time frame. I think
I read
August is
it,
a tad
I read it,
optimistic.
I read it. You're okay.
So I think we have general consensus on the alternates and we wanna keep in and add on.
Yes.
I did have a question. Where are we on the park naming process?
Funny that you mention it, the packet just got posted today for Parks and Trails, and it was included in there with the thought of naming it Heritage Park.
Okay.
So they are going to see that next Tuesday, because Thursday is Juneteenth, so the holidays will be rescheduled. And then I'm going to turn out their response very quickly to you guys for the Wednesday deadline for packet for the 23rd.
I like that name.
I like McKee Field.
No,
I'll
maybe
veto that
maybe
one.
someday if I.
But which
get
one on the
something going
pinwheel?
Yeah.
Because-
But I do like Heritage Park a lot, but it
That's
would be
good.
good to hear, I suppose, the commission feedback, but, yeah, if you could, I think we have consensus generally, if you could prepare some stuff to bring back so we could move on that as well.
You will see me back here on the 23rd.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Alrighty, thank you.
all.
Thank you.
On to new business. We have two items, 9A, which is just informational only at this time. It is Hennepin County, County Road, or Casas 117 and County Road 19 improvements.
Yes, Mayor. The purpose of this item is just really to update the council on where this project stands. I believe as the most recent time it was brought before council, there was a letter of support for a grant application, and that was January of 2024. There were some previous conversations to that, but this project's kind of been out in Hennepin County's world on their radar as a need. It's kind of the awkward intersection, the very northwest corner of the city. The city of Hanover has been kind of championing it for a while, and we participated in some grant applications. And more recently, the project has gained traction. It received some federal earmarking through the same program that we got support through the city park. And that really kind of engaged Hennepin County, and now it's into their implementation phase. So they're just gearing up this project, and they're going to be embarking on a public engagement process that starts in July. So the purpose here is to kind of disclose that, share with you that it's happening, and because a portion of the project is within the city of Corcoran, we have some cost share elements to that. They were identified in the grant application, or potential cost share elements. We haven't signed up to anything yet. We've shown support for the project.
And there's potential ways to mitigate that with different funds, like, is this the one that had potentially you could use MSA?
Yes, yep, so I should pause there, Jay. I think if someone's able, or Deb is able to pull up a schematic, I do have a schematic that shows you a specific so we can look at it. It was the design, the preliminary roundabout design that was included in the 2024 plan. I think there's actually a file in there too that shows a roundabout that's more zoomed in, but that's the location of the intersection, right at the northwest corner of the city. So really they're embarking in a public engagement program. We'll be listed as that because it's within the city. Hennepin County has a specific cost share kind of policy that attaches us to this, so without our support, the project would go away, or, we would be at some risk for like kind of changing our position to some degree, to be frank with you. But we do have that ability to get out of it still. But so if we're strongly against it, we should voice that now. This is the schematic that was previously shared. They're looking at a roundabout for this intersection, and they will be engaging that process. What does it mean? There's a public meeting at the City of Hanover coming up in July. There'll be a pop-up event at our Night to Unite soliciting feedback. This isn't scheduled for construction until 2027, so they have a kind of a long, drawn-out process, and so we're just kind of populating that. It'll go out in our newsletter if you show support, and it will be part of the engagement process with the county. As they further design, there'll be some right-of-way needs. There'll be different factors, so we're really just embarking on the project. Their initial cost estimate, well, this isn't in the report, but their initial cost estimate in 2024 was for Corcoran was $152,000. Their revised cost estimate is $170,000. That was in there, I apologize, is $167,000, so it has gone up. It might move around a little bit. It's too early to really define that, but we're really looking at like a roughly right now, they're proposing it as a 3.7% cost to the city of Corcoran, or 3.8% cost to the Corcoran. I think we're getting good value for the portion of the project when we capitalize on these other funding sources and grant programs. So when you get one grant, other grants sometimes match it, and so that's how we can kind of reduce our percentage. So I think it's good value. I would recommend that we
I think there's no reason to say no at this point.
What's that?
I think there's no reason to say no at this point. We haven't committed to anything. I'd like to see where it goes, like to see the public, input sections and see how this develops, and where some of those numbers end up, and what we could maybe do with MSA and all that before we make a financially binding decision. But I think it's worth keeping an eye on.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Just curious, is there a trail, like pedestrian trails that go along there, that corridor?
On the
There's-
east side of 19's the Three
Okay.
Rivers Trail,
Okay,
and that would remain Three Rivers, so it's east side, it does wrap around, and that will be maintained. Three Rivers is also part of the conversation. They have property and obviously the trail, so really the things that we have to be mindful of is, we do have a cost participation right now, they're projecting at 3.8%. That's better than a standalone project with Hennepin County. It's more of like a 50-50 match depending on what you do. So we're getting good value there. And then there's the long-term maintenance agreements that they require of these type of contracts per their policy. We only really have a trail in Corcoran that's a Three Rivers trail. This would have to be, detailed out later, but, we may be able to, Three Rivers doesn't maintain their trails, and it's a Three Rivers trail, so there's maybe an opportunity for us to carve out any trail responsibility since it's not our trail. So long-term maintenance might be avoided
Yeah.
potentially in this case, because we're not gonna have dual trails paralleling 19, so. So I think it's a good deal. The details to be worked out, but I think it's something that we should, continue to monitor, and if there's questions, Lauren and I are the contacts through the city. We are included in the design meetings, so we're following the process.
that's awesome. My question is actually related to, like, have there been studies on the safety of roundabouts for pedestrians, as long as we have a trail there? Because that's a super busy intersection, and I'm familiar with roundabouts, and I've seen many close calls with pedestrians because the walkways are so close to where traffic is trying to get in and off of the roundabout. Is there a way in your design process you can push where the pedestrians cross out further? So it's not so close to where all the traffic is. Because what happens is someone's trying to go, someone's trying to get on, there's a pedestrian crossing, the person trying to get on doesn't see the pedestrian crossing. The car in front of you sees the pedestrian, but you almost get rear ends or you hit the pedestrian. So close. So I think it would be safer, and I've seen this happen too, where people are walking outside of where the pedestrian crosswalk is to try to move away from the traffic.
That might almost be a conversation with Three Rivers.
I was gonna say, like, we're just embarking on the design, but I think Three Rivers is gonna highly scrutinize this crossing.
Okay.
Being so close to their park, so we can share that feedback. That's something that will be a priority. It's a priority to Hennepin County. The goal of this project is to improve safety for both traffic and pedestrians in the area, so, I can't tell you what that looks like today.
Yeah.
They don't have a design fully yet. This is just.
Well, it's templated here for two, and a point that I'd make, when you're talking about in Ridgefield, it's every component of it.
Yeah.
The trail is only meant on the east side until it crosses to the north side of 117.
Okay.
Then it crosses to the west side in order to get to Crowhassan. So there'll
Okay.
be two crossings rather than 4 crossings is what they have templated.
Well,
But to
especially
Kevin's-
with the speed on this one, because the speed will be much higher. Yeah.
And to Kevin's point, Three Rivers is they're responsible for the trail and the anticipated traffic going to the regional park. That will be the champion of that.
Yeah, it's really their trail. We can advise and have input. I think they have pretty high, they're kind of the Cadillac trail designers in the metro, so they have they're very experienced in these type of situations, so I feel we'll represent that. We represent, I want to be clear, we represented that, whatever, we also want them looking at the intersection of 30 and 19. We advocate, we know that's not the greatest intersection. It's not part of the scope, I want to be clear, but we're commenting at a staff level that making sure we're looking downstream in different directions to make sure that we're not doing something that has a significant worsening of those intersections, so that we're advocating for those concerns.
Maybe thinking about traffic calming as elements, like where you have those
Watch your eyes.
crosswalks. If that crosswalk could be raised like 2 or 3 inches, so it's almost like a speed hump that you can still plow over, but cars have to slow down to go over it comfortably, could help to make it safer.
Maybe you could tell Hennepin County and see what they say.
I hear you, so if
Yeah.
you have ideas, relay them to us. Again, 2 county roads, we can certainly advocate. We're probably not the final decider, but we will take feedback that you have and relay that to the design.
Hopefully between you and the Three Rivers people, there'll be enough to influence.
It's the goal of the reason that this is being identified and north, we usually go with that much, tension out here. It's because that they have identified this as a safety issue, and so they're prioritizing safety again for both pedestrians and vehicles. So I think you know,
Keep building that
we'll take all that
relationship.
data, and it's really a county project, we're a partner, we have some say, we're at the table. We're not the
3.8%
final-
say.
We're not the final person, so we'll do our best to do that and make sure the process is navigated and keep everyone in touch. But again, tonight was really more about, hey, this has become a real project, which is, I think, a good thing overall, and the details still have to be, figured out, and there will be a heavy engagement and communication plan put in play, which is standard practice for county projects, beginning in July, so.
Perfect.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I'll be remiss if I don't say it. Is there any way it can be a four-way stop before this happens? Adding one more stop sign, be it temporary, signs that say future roundabout, something to prepare, but we gotta stop that traffic. There's people that are running the stop signs east-west. And then obviously the northbound there's no stop. Is there anything that can be temporarily put in there to highlight the fact that all four directions should be stopped?
Because we don't control, you know,
I
it's
know.
not within the city
I
boundaries.
know. Can we ask Hennepin County again?
Each time Commissioner Anderson has come here,
Yep.
that's come up as a point, and each time I've seen him, we've emphasized not just that point, but to Kevin's point, we have several dangerous intersections on county roads
Yep.
within the city, and we emphasize them each time. So we'll continue to
Appreciate
advocate
it.
for safety as soon as possible. And I would also say, you know, because of Kevin's efforts and our communication, we've seen some positive return on
Yep.
that investment.
No, I appreciate it. I don't know why. I do know why. I've seen people nearly get hit. Horse trailers, everything heading north, and people just cut in front of them and stuff, so. And then it's already a contentious intersection with some of the landowners just north and east of this corner, so it's a whole event center, turn it into an event center. Thanks for listening.
Interesting thing I just saw that I'd share with you, Councilmember Nichols. I have a cabin in northern Wisconsin. I hadn't seen this before. They just recently installed this along State Highway 51 near my cabin. But where the snowmobile crossings are, they actually raised it about half an inch,
Yeah.
and it's about 4 foot wide and white in order to emphasize that there's a change in what's happening. So every point along 51 where there's a snowmobile crossing, they've raised it that way.
That's great.
I had not seen that before until this summer. So
Another side note, when I was in Iceland, so thanks for letting me go to Iceland for the last, but every ped crossing in Iceland had a raised, like, that's how they dealt with it too. Not to say we want to do that, but just another caveat.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to 9B, Horseshoe Trail Street Improvement.
All right, thanks again, Mayor. So again, another project here that's coming up, or just at least a decision coming up related to some street improvements that were associated with the Tavera development. So I think it was 2019 that the development was originally approved. The very far western connection, so Tavera 7th edition, which has been approved and is in construction. There was two off-site improvements associated with that. So on the screen here in red was basically a road improvement, a street improvement project that was converting two of our collector roads, Horseshoe Trail and Old Settlers, into a paved surface, and that was as a result of the development in that. And then the blue part on this map is really a water main looping. So we're just kind of identifying the two questions. If you get any feedback, we've sent out some information to landowners that will be impacted. Again, the blue and the red projects are developer paid projects as a requirement of the development. So those are in play regardless. The area that we're focusing on here in this conversation is really the yellow highlighted area. So it's from the eastern property line of the Tavera development, so the western edge of the bubble on your screen, through the trail lane intersection, basically to the 90-degree turn where the road changes from Horseshoe Trail to, I believe, Trail Lane. So that's the area. It's a gravel area right now. There's some drainage issues right at the intersection of Trail Lane when we have like large, there's some grade there, and there's some challenges collecting water when we have like large capacity events or intense events, so. Really the topic for tonight is, do we want to address that with this project? It would be a city paid for project, to some capacity, not developer funded. From a maintenance standpoint, it's going to be a challenge for us.
To keep it as
To keep it as gravel. You know, and especially with it kind of being piecemealed, like, and surrounded by pavement, that tends to have more issues wherever you transfer from pavement to gravel. That's where we have the most potholing, if you ever in areas like that. So now we have 3 spots where basically we're gonna have a big pothole there fairly regularly. So we're gonna have to drive a grader down from Northwest where Public Works is to here routinely. We anticipate more calls and complaints or so. It's really a question of, do we want to do something with now? There was a conversation 5-6 years ago about what we do with this section of road, and it was elected to just remain gravel. There was different feedback from council. I mentioned it in the staff report. It really wasn't a firm directive, but there was conversation of potentially that leaving it gravel would help deter cut-through traffic. I don't know. It was never really voted on. It was a topic of conversation, so I wanted to be transparent tonight and say that was a topic when the original road was approved. I believe at that meeting I stated that I would say from a maintenance perspective it should be paved. I'm restating that position tonight because my role is to pay attention to maintenance costs and to provide an advocate for that. So that's why we're here today. It's city-led. It's city-led, Public Works-led for this ask, and it's simply an ask, do we want to address it now? Why would we want to address it now? A, we eliminate that maintenance. We could capitalize it as an alternate with the red project, a street project. So whenever you bundle sections of road with larger sections, you get a lower bid unit price. So we would have a better return, better value for this work. So it's kind of a we save in maintenance, we save in potential price, we believe, and that's been transparent through all our processes. We don't know until we have the bid. So first question is, do you support that consideration? That consideration means just taking it to bid. If you support it, then if you do support it, the next question would be, is technically our assessment policy says when we make a street improvement project, you know, converting from gravel to pave would be considered a street improvement project. Do we want to entertain an assessment of benefiting properties? So, and I'll pause there and let you talk or ask questions.
I have a question. This seems unusual. How did this happen? Is there some history here? Like, I don't understand how we have this. What?
Previous council
said no.
before any of this.
But, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Is there some reason? Like, do we know why we have this gravel chunk?
Sounds, I mean, right now that it's gravel.
Right now, all the red and yellow are gravel today.
But
and
the development's
and
gonna
the
be paved.
blue and then the stuff to the southeast is paved.
Okay.
So
So it's not just the yellow that's gravel, it's the whole red?
And the red too, but the
Red
red's
and
getting
yellow.
paid for, is getting corrected already and paid for by the developer.
Okay, all right. And what's the price for the yellow?
We estimated it,
$135,000.
very quick estimation. We do a lot of bids, so it's relatively accurate, but we haven't designed it or anything. That's in there, it's $135,000 we anticipate.
And do we know, was there some odd reason why this short length of road was left gravel?
I think what Kevin was getting at a little bit was previous council had some discussion, maybe informally, about if they left that gravel, would that cut back on cut-through traffic through the neighborhood from people going from the west? I'm not so sure it would or will, especially when it's paved to the north and to the west there, and to the east-south there. And even if it did, would that outweigh the maintenance cost and issues? I'd like to see us look into this project. Is there a way we can get some of the 429 information on assessing before making a decision on that? Because I'm just not sure who all potentially benefits and to what extent, and I'd like to see that before.
Yeah, I can just speak to some, we haven't done, so when I came to, I've almost been at the city 8 years, so when I first came here, there was conversations about some of our larger collector roads, Trailhaven, Willow. There was Willow advanced to final design before it didn't end up going through, so there's some pretty extensive, you know, we can't compare that project as directly, but those projects had they had an assessment for, you know, direct access, which would be properties that have driveways off the specific road. So Trailhaven's a good example, right? Trailhaven, anyone that had a driveway on Trailhaven had a direct access assessment value. And then Fox Line Tree Line is a residential street off of that was at that point evaluated for indirect access, meaning they had to drive down the collector road, they lived nearby, but they weren't directly accessing off of it. That's probably the best case study of anything that I'm aware of in Corcoran. In those specific cases, it was approximately, they varied, everything varies, it was about 25 to 35% was what I saw when I looked back between indirect and direct assessment values. So when I look at this piece, I see maybe one property, the property to the north of the yellow has their main driveway off a trail lane, and they have a garage or some sort of accessory structure off of the yellow. So that's a maybe direct access, maybe not. And then really, we'd have to evaluate the neighborhood to the southeast, but really Trail Lane would qualify as indirect access because you have to drive through the yellow to physically get to Trail Lane. So I would say Trail Lane would be, comparing to those past projects, would probably fall under indirect. Again, I just want to caveat, this is high level, looking back, I'm not an assessor or appraiser.
We could maybe get some additional information brought.
So I guess what I'm getting to is I think there's 9 lots there. And in real rough guess, it's like 25 to 35,000 in assessments, right? Again, we could look at it, I'm just trying to give you a little bit, tried to give a little bit of context. And probably to go through the 429 process, we'd have to do a feasibility study, we'd have to pay for an appraisal, we'd have to do some notices. Obviously staff time is a cost, an opportunity cost, we're busy. And so just a non-staff time cost might be 10, 12,000, 15,000, I'm guessing. So we're probably gaining 15, 20,000 at a very preliminary thing if we considered assessments.
So I guess maybe the better question for council is it unique enough that we maybe want to forego that and just handle it ourselves?
I think
Okay.
it's small enough.
I'd rather we handle it ourselves.
I agree.
Can I ask a quick question? How much does it cost us to do the dusting on that one? The
Dust
calcium.
control, we saving dust control costs.
I was
yes,
just gonna say
that's-
that
I
would-
didn't even think of that, that falls under maintenance costs, yep, that we
Okay.
regularly dust control that, and I can
We
provide that
make up
number.
for the
That's-
cost pretty quickly,
That's what
I
I'm
think.
saying.
That's
Yep.
fairly cheap, comparative, but that's an annual thing we do
another
every
deal.
year, so
But
all those
overall
things do
maintenance, I
add
feel
up,
like we'd
yeah.
catch up to 130-some thousand pretty quick.
Do we have anything slated in our road budget?
We don't. What I would propose is looking at, we're getting into the budget cycle, we generally have an asphalt maintenance fund or line item that we have applied, either it's an asphalt road, it's kind of a blend, but I would propose just maybe beefing that up on a one-time year to cover any of this, potentially even reallocating it to this, depending on to your discretion and where the budget lines, but this would be a project done and an expenditure done in '26, so we'd have time to budget for it.
Question.
And I would,
Go ahead.
I would just say, I think we have time to decide, it's just, the decision point is if we're considering assessments, there are strings attached to that, and it's a form of work.
I think council's okay with it.
So if that's off the table,
Get her done.
it's more of just getting it done and getting a price and then planning a budget for it in '26.
Okay.
And I think that's doable with where we sit and positioning of different projects within our budget and or adding a little bit extra on a one-off if there is available budget. I think we can get there at this price point. And again, we would still have an opportunity to look at it. If prices were 200,000, we might change our opinion. Again, we hope that they're more like 110,000.
I think it's more likely to go down with
when we draw
some
down,
of the
but
synergies.
I think there's value in getting a number, like we've seen with a couple of projects here, most recently with City Park tonight, right? Getting a real number helps you make a real decision.
Process-wise, I did want to emphasize something that I didn't want to get lost in the conversation. So if we were to do the 429 process, we'd want to do a feasibility study, $20,000 to $30,000 on a feasibility study. So if we were ever considering assessments, we at least would want to recoup the cost of the feasibility study. But then if all we're recouping is the cost of the feasibility study, the juice to squeeze ratio is a bit off.
It's a unique project. One other thing I would just throw in there is if we could look at if it makes sense, if it would help, if it would be feasible to put a stop sign or something at the, as the horseshoe kind of turns down into, it's not Valley View, but whatever.
I think that's Trail Lane, actually, if I remember right.
Is it?
It's Trail
There
Lane.
though, yeah.
Yep, and then
We could look at a
north-south
stop
segment's
sign, if
Trail
that would
Lane.
be beneficial, I don't know, just something to consider.
Yeah, we did actually look at that, preliminary engineering guidelines, if that's not a spot that you would, engineering standards would tell you to put one.
Okay.
But we can follow up and provide more context as we move forward, but just as a high level initial look, that is not a normal
Okay.
guideline situation.
Yeah, or other potential solutions to try to mitigate if we're concerned that if it's all gonna be paved, that people might be speeding into that neighborhood.
It's a pretty hard 90 turn.
It is,
And so
that's true.
sometimes those
Yep.
turns self-control you
Yep, that's true.
to be able to make the turn. But yes, we can continue to try to seek improvements
Sounds good.
at a high level. Again, that's not, by engineering standard would not be a justification or a recommendation.
Gotcha. Oh. All good?
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the direction.
And then with that, we just have staff reports. Anything, Jay?
Kevin's got
Ma'am,
one.
I love that sweatshirt, by the way. Yeah.
But you stayed for the whole meeting.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Kevin's just got,
Oh, thank you.
Come back in 2 weeks. I'll be here.
Kevin's just got one staff report comment.
Sure, thanks again. We just have an update related to the watershed commissioner application process. So we've been really promoting that a lot. I think the council has as well. And recently we've had 3 or 4 people verbally say they're interested and several pickup applications. And we did actually officially receive our first application, formal
Cool.
application for
Awesome.
one of the spots here probably a week and a half ago. And it's been a while since we really went through this process. And so one of the asks is to identify, a process for selecting that person. Right now, we just have one. We anticipate possibly others.
Do we want to continue with our same kind of rotating thing? I know you and I did one recently, so it'd be you and me, Jeremy?
Sounds
You
good.
and I did one
I don't think we're
before
done
that.
one with you yet, so it's probably my turn.
No,
We did
not
Parks
this
and
term,
Trails.
yeah. So if we continued that, so just our regular appointment process with me and a rotating council member, and then,
I think it
you
would,
sit in
it
on
would be
that.
probably Lauren, because she's,
Or Lauren, yeah.
Lauren and myself would probably be involved, because she's
Yeah.
kind of the.
Whoever on staff wants to, and I'd be more than happy to have them join us.
So a quick timeline that Kevin and I talked about because of some of the constraints that we have happening on the calendar is those who have expressed an interest, we're going to ask them to get an application and confirm their interest with a submission by the 20th, which would be next week.
Okay.
We need to get the process going forward. If we could have the interviews occur then that next week with whoever that is, with the two of you and everyone.
We won't be out of town that week.
You will be?
Won't we all be out of town mostly?
So before we go out of town,
The
so
23rd
between
is
June
the
20, the request would be to do interviews between June 23rd and July 1st. So
Oh,
within that
okay.
window.
I can do it that 28th, 29th, and 30th.
Yeah, so somewhere within that window. So that would allow us to get it into the packet, whoever's selected by July 2nd, so that we could make a decision on July 10th,
Okay.
if that works.
At least for the first wave, we're hoping that
Yeah.
we have more apply, but if we have basically one empty spot and commissioner.
deputy.
Jeremy, are you going to the league conference? No. So maybe even we could set up a time where I could call and conference in and step out of a thing there. And so
I'll
we'll make
have
it work.
Lauren send out an email to Councilmember Nichols and the mayor and myself, and
Perfect.
we'll set a time, and then, or a couple times, that we can,
Perfect.
or whatever works for you, and we'll.
Only day that doesn't work for me is the 24th, and then when I'm at the conference, but I might be able to step out of the conference.
As long as we can get feedback in order to get in the packet by July 2nd, that would be helpful.
Perfect. Council reports. I had one, but I think I'm gonna push it off to a later meeting when I have more information. Got some information from League of Minnesota Cities about some updated laws and things that happened at the end of the session and the special session, but they're gonna send out a more detailed, full packet, and I'll make sure to get that out to Jay so we can get it out to council when that does happen. There's a few things that weren't expecting any changes on that might be beneficial with us, particularly the one with a lot more flexibility with the remote meeting attendance. You don't have to have a sick doctor's note or anything like that. No max 3 times, seemingly it's unlimited. You don't have to be in a public place that you stay. You don't have to go to a hotel lobby and say I'm in the hotel lobby at wherever. They just make it a lot easier.
And we now have common technology that can help facilitate that.
Yeah. So that was one of them.
Okay. It is Zoom.
I was talking about the iPads rather than the Zoom powers.
We can do both.
And a few other ones, but like I said, I'll let you know when that comes, when I get that full packet in the next week or two. Only other thing that I did hear pretty resoundingly was that they, I believe, are very confident that the housing bills that we saw this year and in previous years and fought against with a lot of other cities will be coming back in full force next session. And that coalition is slowly gaining strength, so we're working on some ideas of getting groups together and trying to come up with alternatives and all that. I'll keep you guys posted as I have in the past. Only other thing for me, just to let you guys know, I will be out of town July 16th and 17th. And that's it for now.
I had one thing. We got emails, I think everybody got one from residents who had overgrown ditch weeds from the installation of sewer and water pipe along Hackamore. I stopped by this morning. I just sent photos to Jay if you want to share them with everybody so they can see. I'd appreciate it if that could be sodded. I think when we do road projects, we require sod to be replaced. I would imagine this should be treated similarly.
Jay and I are meeting on it Monday.
Yeah, the mayor brought me pictures too, so we've got lots of pictures. Kevin and I have been talking about it. And also, you know, being candid, one of the things Kevin and I talked about is this being a joint project with Medina. There's some concerns there about is the Medina side getting the same attention that the Corcoran side's getting?
I think this is after that road project, though. This is from this spring.
Right. I'm just talking in terms of how that project played itself out, whether it's with sodding or other things. There's at least a perception that there might be some different applied standards. And so how do we dig into that?
Did one side get sodded and not the other?
I can't answer all the questions right now.
Okay.
But the pictures, one side looks better than the other. And then you ask why.
We'll dig into it.
Yeah, so so the Hackmore project's not closed out, so we'll be able to address it. I think their main concern is it being not addressed fast enough. So I've spoken with both of the residents several times, so I think I have a good relationship with them, so I think they're fair comments that they have. I think what I heard from that in previous conversations is really related to timeliness of that, and so I think most of the timeliness questions are tied to Hackmore, so we're working through that. That hasn't been closed. And then there was the water main project that was required with the Woodland Hills, so it was basically a directional drilled water main on the north side that happened this spring, tied into Steeplechase, basically in Ravinia. That was drilled, so there's a hydrant, there's probably some disturbed areas around the hydrant. It would be kind of like where they had pits, so very limited disturbance on there. So the stuff that looks more incomplete would be tied to our developer, so we'd have some control over that. And the stuff that's really not going through in the tall weeds, that parallels Hackmore is really the other contract. So we're working with some contract overlaps and different entities, so we will re-engage them and get this addressed.
Thank you.
Perfect, appreciate it. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Address 21165 County Road 10. The utility pole got hit, will be 2 weeks ago, this coming Saturday. It is draping down over one of that property owner's driveway, and I'm guessing there's not much more than 10, 12 feet of clearance.
Right, okay.
Address again?
12265 County Road 10. There's orange cones, everything around it, nothing's been done, the pole is still hanging. It's a utility pole, I assume it's Comcast, and anything else is not electric, but that neighbor is asking me if there's something that the city can do. It's not a city
So if it's
thing.
paralleling County Road 10, we would not have permitted it, so what we can evaluate.
There's
what
orange
leverage
cones,
We have.
there's
If
a,
it's an access issue, I think we'll look at it and evaluate it, but we don't have a permit for that, it's a county road
yep,
right away.
there's
so
a
we might be
bumper cover
limited.
there
Worst case,
from the
maybe reach out to
vehicle
someone
that
at the
hit
county
the
about it.
pole,
Yeah.
Is there a license plate?
broke the pole, no, it
I-
just, it's been almost 2 weeks, so.
Two things. September 11th, I will not be here.
Okay.
I'll be gone.
I don't have a calendar there anymore, so I don't know why I look.
I will be in France with my daughter. I know.
Bring back some macaroons for your council friends.
I can do that. And then, quick question on, I noticed they've been putting a lot of those metal flags down in the ditches again. And I only bring this up because my daughter and I maintain the highway from like where I live all the way down to, I think almost to the stoplights. And we must have picked up, if not 1,000, 3,000 of those stupid little flags with the wire sticking out of them, like they're orange, they're pink, they're all kinds of different colors.
The locate.
Locators, yep. Who is supposed to be picking those up when they're done with that, with whatever project that they're doing?
Apparently you.
And you're doing a good job.
Are they done?
Thank you.
Were they done? Do they have to rehire the locator to come back and put them all in?
Yeah, it should be who puts them down, or whoever's associated with the project.
So like, how do we monitor that though? Like, how do we, like, I know that's like a slippery slope.
You could send maybe the area that you picked those up to Kevin, and he could look and see what.
I mean, I don't even know if you'd be able to know, because there was like they were like rusty and like really, really bad. So
There are some in that ditch on Hackmore as well, too.
Yeah, I guess I might have to do some research on that. It is a challenge. If it's associated with a project, and the contractor calls in, we can get on them to clean it up. If it's someone just calling in to locate for informational purposes, that's a publicly protected, required process, but, we'd have to look at that.
The flags don't
Our
always have
justification
identity
call
in
them
order to go back and figure out whose flag they are.
Property, I
Uh-huh.
don't know,
It's
most
a standard
of them are in
flag.
the right of way.
If you could do some digging and see what you can find out, that'd be great.
yeah,
It's not an easy one,
I know. I'm sorry.
Good job on cleaning
but
it
it's
up.
real.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now that you brought that up, do we know what all the survey is going on 116?
I don't know what they're doing, honestly. I know that they've been doing soil borings. AEP, that's a county-led project, and we can try to get an answer on that.
Those are the holes in the middle of the
Yep.
road.
Yeah, they're
Just,
soil borings.
just asking what's going on.
I
Don't
guess
need to
another
chase.
update is, I believe on the 23rd, our contractor for the St. Teresa 79 turn lane should be starting.
Will that get going?
Yeah, I think on the 23rd, and then the intersection up on, back in front of Hope there and Hunter's Ridge and 116 should be almost starting at the same time.
Perfect.
Wow.
So we have two kickoff meetings, so it'll get busier on 116. And then
Steep
Larkin
road is
Road, just between the Red Hennepin substation and 116 is also a project you'll see that was required with that
Yep.
Red Hennepin substation, basically strengthening the pavement so they can get access to that. So that's was a requirement that should be, it was supposed to be today, so that it's a shorter project, but you'll see signage and we've been working with the golf course on that, and so if you hear anything, relay it to us, but that'll be kicking off here maybe tomorrow.
Cool.
One
Thank you.
more question. Oh, go ahead.
Well, also on the 23rd, just a reminder, we're gathering here
Okay.
first for the work session, and we will be having carpools with staff to get you to the site.
5 o'clock here.
4:30, I think, is
4:30.
actually the collection time.
Okay.
So that we can get everybody down to the site. We'll have light refreshments. We also will have in the conference room for council members, we'll have pizza and some salad.
Cool.
So that, because it's going to be a busy evening. We're doing a walkthrough next week. So if you have any questions about it, if you could send them to me in the next few days so that we can make sure we have a plan to address your questions as part of the walkthrough. And then also on the 23rd we should have our final decision about Housing First.
Okay. Really quick question. Do we, just as off the cuff, do we have, when we approved the substation on Larkin, did we put anything to place to have them deconstruct the other part of the
They said
substation?
within 5 years.
Okay. Okay.
And I know they've
So I
started.
thought that I'd sent a note,
did.
but I met with their head engineer here about 3 weeks ago, and we found out that they do have plans to be taking down the fence and taking away part of the parking lot. They have to maintain part of the parking lot because they still need access to that. So a significant portion, to include most of the structure, should disappear within the next 12 months.
Nice.
Sweet. That'll be huge because
Yeah.
it looks like a jungle when it's on both sides.
It does.
A lot better, so. Perfect. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.